everyone, Novels Wonderland here. Thank you all for the love and support you've shown me and the channel.
Bone King, The Restorer's Wildlife, Chapter 26 to 50, Akala Strike. Rowan was holding onto a sliver of hope. After all, the probability of an ordinary human summoning a Death Knight was low. Even the Empire's guardian god couldn't do it. There was no way he would just randomly encounter such a powerful being. He still let Black Crow scout ahead. He had only gone halfway when he discovered the undead swarming up. Ha, a Death Knight is indeed difficult to fight, but dealing with you little things. Wouldn't that be one slice per kill? In his eyes, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 were all about the same. One slice would instantly kill them. With astonishing defense and optimization, he wasn't afraid of being ganged up on. He cut his way through, and no skeleton could stop him. After a long while, Rowan looked back into the underground cavern. The undead in the cavern had significantly decreased, most of them had been killed by him in the cave. Rowan observed carefully. The highest level undead here was only level 24, which was just Tier 4. There were no deviants. Rowan believed that no one in this world could currently hide from his eyes. Since there weren't any, then it was time to unleash a massacre. Underground cave, 2nd floor. The black-robed mage was fuming, his mirror showing the scene on the 1st floor. Earlier his Death Knight had chased the opponent out, and the black-robed mage had no idea what happened. This mirror could only monitor the situation above through a special magic array, so it was limited to the 1st floor. He had no idea what was happening outside. But he knew that his connection with the Death Knight had been severed. There were 3 possibilities for this situation. The first possibility, the Death Knight died. However, this was impossible. The power of the Death Knight was beyond what ordinary people could imagine. Perhaps someone in the kingdom could kill a Death Knight, but definitely not this strange young man. The second, the Death Knight was sealed, restricted, or affected by some special magic. This possibility also existed. Perhaps the opponent used some precious magic item. The third possibility, the opponent used some means to lure the Death Knight away. This situation occurs if the Death Knight is too far from its summoner. The third possibility was more likely. Seeing the opponent slaughtering his subordinates, the black-robed mage became even angrier. According to his observations, this young man hadn't even reached hero rank, yet he dared to be so arrogant. He stood up and headed to the 2nd floor. The moment the opponent first appeared, Rowan noticed him. His level was like a torch in the dark, making it impossible to ignore him. Bess, undead. Level, 36. Justice value, -250. Professions, undead, LV10, mage, LV15, necromancer, LV5, grand archmage of the dead, advanced LV6. Level 36. He had just stepped into the realm of a deviant. Rowan's heart tightened. Looking at the opponent's profession composition, and the fact that this guy was not human but undead, his profession composition was also a spellcasting profession of the undead type. No wonder he could control a Death Knight. The upper limit for humans was low, and the boundaries were difficult to break. Other races found it much easier, so many powerful humans chose to become other races to break through their limits. Who are you? The opponent confronted Rowan from a distance, the undead in between them already forming ranks under his control. An adventurer from the Adventurers Guild. That Death Knight was summoned by you, wasn't he? The black-robed mage proudly raised his head, revealing his terrifying skeletal face. Indeed, that is my most prized creation. What exactly did you do? Where is the Death Knight now? Did he not get my information? That's a good thing. But this guy doesn't look very smart. Did his brain rot after becoming undead? That low-intelligence Death Knight was simply lured away by me. Now he's gone, no one knows where, Rowan said casually. The black-robed mage didn't seem to doubt him and said angrily, "Damn fellow, your good luck ends here. A mere human, not even hero rank, dares to come to my place. He pressed his hand down, and the undead began to attack in formation. It had to be said, controlled undead felt completely different from wild undead. Rowan also felt a sense of pressure. He swung his blade, clearing out the approaching undead. As for ranged attacks like arrows and magic, he dodged if he could, and took them head-on if he couldn't. With his defense, they had little effect. The black-robed mage in the back looked surprised and suspicious. This guy was a bit strange, he didn't seem human. Human bodies weren't that tough. No matter what, anyone who hadn't reached hero rank was just trash. He began to chant a spell. Tier 5 magic, corrosive arrow. He charged up and performed a draw slash. He cleared out the few small skeletons in front of him. Seeing that he was still a long distance from the mage, Rowan felt very helpless. A melee profession facing a spellcaster would be at a great disadvantage if he couldn't get close to the enemy. Although Rowan now had offensive means, he lacked means of rushing in, which made him very passive. Taking a tier 5 spell head-on, Rowan's HP dropped a small chunk. Although his magic defense was high, it wasn't immunity. He still couldn't be immune to tier 5 magic, but this slight damage had little impact. Forget it, it seems there's no way without using ultimate skills. If he could get close to the opponent, he could do it even without ultimate skills, but the problem was, he couldn't get close at all. Rowan pointed his hand at the black-robed mage. Immovable Wisdom King Strike, Immovable Lasso. A huge black chain appeared out of thin air, directly binding the opponent. The black-robed mage was shocked and angry. What kind of magic is this? Aren't you a swordsman? You. Rowan didn't bother to answer him, and directly used his second move, Immovable Wisdom King Strike, Kurakara Sword. A giant statue of the Wisdom King appeared behind the black-robed mage. The Wisdom King raised both hands, holding a lightning longsword, and a terrifying aura covered the entire area. No, impossible, what exactly is this? He wanted to escape, but the eerie ropes tightly bound him, making his movement extremely difficult. He wanted to chant a spell, but his movements were as slow as an 80-year-old grandfather. No, you can't kill me, I am. The longsword struck down with a roar, and terrifying golden energy surged in all directions. This guy's justice value was minus 250, so the damage bonus he took was terrifying. With just one strike, the black-robed mage was smashed into dust, and the remaining energy directly destroyed a large area of skeletons around him. Excellent, excellent. As expected of Azura's ultimate move, its power truly didn't disappoint. If overlimit deterioration was a terrifying mechanic skill, then Immovable Wisdom King Strike was a combination of a powerful control skill and a high damage skill. Such pure violent destruction was truly a sight to behold. Chapter 27, Two-Faced Alien. The Immovable Wisdom King Strike destroyed the final boss with just one move, and also cleared out a large area of surrounding monsters. A dense stream of experience points popped up, the largest of which came from the Necromancer, providing over 700,000 experience points, significantly more than the Death Knight. Rowan didn't save it, he immediately invested it into Grand Alchemist. If they were magical beasts, they would be fleeing by now, but the unintelligent undead didn't understand this. They merely stared blankly at everything, while some charged towards Rowan. The next task was simply to clear out the undead creatures. The levels of these undead monsters were not low, each one provided hundreds of experience points or more. After all of them were cleared, his level increased by another rank. Currently, Rowan had reached level 26. It was a pity that the Grand Alchemist's level offered very limited improvement to Rowan's current strength. After all, his primary means of offense was his sword, so the increased magic attack and MP weren't very useful. The highest level magic he could use was only tier 2, which was less effective than just cutting with his sword. The monsters were cleared, and the boss was pulverized into dust, leaving nothing useful behind. He checked the surroundings and found another downward passage. Rowan first sent the scouting Black Crow into the area below. The second floor was smaller than the first, divided into various rooms resembling a laboratory. Rowan didn't find any threatening presences. It seemed this fellow was also a scientist, but it was a shame he died too quickly for any interaction. Rowan directly entered the second floor and found no traps. The black-robed mage probably never expected to be cleared out so easily, unable even to escape. The second floor had many areas, including a material room, a laboratory, a study, and so on, appearing to have been in use for some time. Rowan's first stop was the laboratory, because there were still living people here. The laboratory was arranged with numerous magic circles that Rowan couldn't understand, but he guessed they were used to cultivate special undead. 4 magic circles were active, 3 of which had already cultivated undead. The undead inside were in a cultivation state, and judging by their attire, they appeared to be unfortunate individuals from the Adventurers Guild. A silver-ranked team, what a pity. The most central magic circle was quite unique. A wooden frame stood inside, with a girl nailed to it in a very strange pose. Her state was even stranger, being in an intermediate state between a living person and an undead. She seemed to be in the process of transformation. If more time passed, she would completely turn into an undead, and by then, she might no longer be of the two-faced abomination race, but perhaps another type of undead. Kanina, two-faced abomination. Level, 18. Justice value, 100. Class, Priest, LV 15, High Priestess, Advanced LV 2, Two-faced Undead, Advanced LV 1. Quite uniquely, Rowan's eyes even displayed a description of this race. Two-faced abomination, other races possessing half the power of life and half the power of death. They have 2 faces, in the sunlight, they bring the gospel of the Lord, and in the night, their bloodthirsty eyes open. What the heck? Feeling someone approach, she struggled to open her eyes. Her consciousness was in a dying state, only able to see blurry shadows, and she repeated in an almost inaudible voice. Save me. Please save me. Please save me. Save me. She kept repeating it. What a strong will to live. If he put himself in her shoes, he would just die. He might even say something like, "Guh, kill me." Rowan hesitated because he had no other healing methods besides optimization. But optimization? Forget it, she's about to die, no need to overthink it. He didn't take her down, as he suspected that in her current state, any movement would cause her to drop dead. He reached out and placed his hand on her body. Optimization. Energy poured out in a rush, a third of his over 200 energy points were instantly depleted. Rowan's mouth twitched slightly, it was the first time he had encountered something that consumed so much energy. Her body recovered at a visible rate. At the same time, Rowan began to synchronize with her memories. He read about her childhood, taking care of her sister, entering the church to study, her exceptional talent leading her to become a priest early on, then a divine official, and finally a high priestess. She went out for training, encountered battle, was captured and then tortured. Everything was transmitted to him, as if he were experiencing it himself. Rowan was covered in sweat, enduring her pain. Pain, too much pain. This really isn't something a human can handle. After healing, synchronizing with the other party's memories and abilities, this ability was inherited too. This ability had great potential. Humans in this other world didn't have many powerful abilities, but those dragons possessed powerful magic. This was an ability from the staff hero. The staff hero from another world constantly grew stronger by healing others and gaining their memories and abilities, transforming from a healer into an incredibly powerful warrior. What Rowan lacked most at the moment was time. With this ability, his magic learning time could be greatly reduced. Several class advancement notifications popped up before Rowan's eyes: Priest, High Priestess, and even Two-Faced Undead. However, Rowan wasn't interested in basic classes and rejected them all. The advanced abilities of Priest and High Priestess leaned towards healing. Among them, High Priestess had a rare advanced class called Valkyrie. This rare class was Sheltier's class, a powerful melee class. It was a pity he already had Azura, so taking on Valkyrie would be somewhat redundant, otherwise, he might have considered it. As for two-faced undead, there were two rare classes, one of which was Bone King's rare class, Eclipse. This rare class was still very strong, belonging to a type of enhanced instant death magic, a specialized necromancy class. If combined with other death element classes, it would naturally be very powerful, but if it was the only necromancy class, its strength would be more limited. However, its ultimate skill, death is the end of all, was still very powerful. This skill could enhance instant death skills, making it so that even if the opponent had resistance, they would still die instantly after a certain amount of time. Rowan's goal was elemental magic and summoning magic, and he didn't want to delve too deeply into death element classes. After all, he was human, and had no intention of transforming into an undead in the future. No matter how much he studied the death element, he would never surpass the Bone King, who specialized in the death element and was an undead himself. Although he coveted it, he could only give it up. The second was a rare class called Mother of Life. That name was a bit subtle. Mother of Life, life and death cycle endlessly, death is also another side of life. Job requirements: Advanced Priest, LV10, Death Master, LV10, Two-Faced Undead, LV10, Female Gender, and having experienced one death and rebirth. Chapter 28, Rare Occupation, Mother of Life. How can this job's requirements be so high? First, let's not even talk about gender. Experiencing death and rebirth isn't that easy to achieve. Of course, the most difficult part is the job level, because all three of these jobs are advanced jobs, and the requirement for taking them is for a basic job to reach level 15. So, under normal circumstances, training 3 jobs to max level would require level 75, and Cleric and Death Master are conflicting jobs, so mastering them isn't easy. However, these are nothing to Rowan. It would be too foolish not to take such a rare job. Eclipse is an instant death skill enhancement, and Rowan cannot fully exert its power, but this job is different. There's nothing to hesitate about. I'll take the job. Job Evolver activated, bypassing prerequisite job requirements. Congratulations on becoming a Mother of Life. Obtained passive skill, Death Resistance. Obtained passive skill, Born from Death. Obtained active skill, Life Creation. Death Resistance, Immune to instant death magic. Description: for every level the Mother of Life gains, all attributes increase by 20 points. Born from Death: when you die, you will immediately revive and gain a constantly decaying shield, effective only once within 7 days. Life Creation: Tier 1 the Mother of Life controls the power of life and death, and can create a type of subordinate. The type of subordinate is automatically generated based on your situation, its strength depends on the skill level, and the number of life forms depends on the character level. After the created life form dies, the creation count can be recovered. You can create one supreme subordinate. This subordinate is configured according to your job, with an initial level of 50, and is capable of growth. When the main body dies, it can revive on a sublife form. When a sublife form dies, it can be revived by consuming MP. After revival, its level drops by 1. If its level is less than 1, it cannot be revived. This skill can self-advance during use. This skill description is too long. And these skills, although they look somewhat like support abilities, their effects are indeed very strong, and they feel like the bane of Eclipse. The skill Life Creation reminded Rowan of Orochimaru from the Naruto world, who could revive from his subordinates even after being killed. A life-saving divine skill. As long as the information isn't leaked, it's hard to die. An immunity to instant death, isn't that specifically targeting the Bone King? Born from Death goes without saying. Even if the Bone King uses his ultimate skill, and death resistance cannot take effect, he can still endure it with this skill. This passive is specifically designed to counter mechanic-based monsters. As long as it's not an ability related to causality, space, or ceiling, these abilities can withstand it. As for Life Creation, that's hard to evaluate. Just now, I was a little worried that I would turn into a woman after taking this job, but thankfully, such an absurd thing didn't happen. The skills of the Mother of Life job are also very powerful. Soul stripping, active strips the opponent's soul and dominates it. If the enemy's resistance is too high, or if the level difference between both parties is less than 10 levels for a life form, it will fail. Failure will convert into soul damage. Usage limit, 3 times/day. Requires Mother of Life LV1. Life's language, passive can hear the languages of all life forms. Requires Mother of Life LV3. Cycle of life and death, active can extract or bestow lifespan on a life form. Usage limit, 1 time/7 days. Requires Mother of Life LV5. How should I put it, the 3 skills of the Mother of Life all look very powerful. Except for the first one, the other 2 have very strong life-saving capabilities. The second skill feels a bit useless, because all languages in this world are universal. Although each race has different languages, they can understand each other's meaning, so life's language doesn't have much effect. And the third skill, if it can be used on oneself, does that mean one can gain eternal life? Bestowing lifespan on a life form, humans yearn most for immortality. As long as this ability is leaked, a large group of experts can be easily recruited. I can only say, it's very strong. With the job successfully taken, Rowan was in a good mood. He looked at the girl. Rowan stared at her status panel. The logic of optimization is to restore a life form's state to its best and most stable condition. It doesn't literally make a person optimization and become stronger. This ability is a more advanced existence than healing. This girl was in a state of collapse, with the life energy and necromantic energy within her constantly clashing. In a short while, she would probably be completely eroded by the necromantic energy and transform into an undead. After optimization, her body stopped collapsing. Under the processing of the optimization energy, the 2 energies were actually pulled into a strange state of balance. That's right, optimization didn't restore her to a human state, nor did it turn her into an undead, instead, it maintained a balanced state. What the hell is this? Is this balanced state a better state than a human state? Rowan wasn't clear now. Seeing her gradually recover, he unlocked the chains and pulled out the nails. When the huge nails were pulled out, blood gushed. Originally, he would have needed to use the optimization skill, but now he didn't. The Mother of Life controls the power of life and death. Although there are no healing-related skills, Rowan actually possesses basic healing abilities. He pressed his hands on her body, consuming MP, and the girl's injuries slowly began to heal. Although this ability was far inferior to optimization, it had no usage limit after all. She knelt on the ground, her consciousness gradually returning. She looked up at Rowan, her pupils a pure black, absorbing the surrounding light like a black hole. This person is a bit eerie. Rowan had almost used up his current skills, but he still had over-limit deterioration in hand. If the other party's situation was not right, Rowan would act. She stared at Rowan for a while, thankfully nothing unexpected happened. Do you still have consciousness? Cough, 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 of course. Thank you very much. You are Undead Slayer, Lord Rowan, right? You. What the hell is Undead Slayer? That title doesn't sound good at all. However, if she knows him, the situation becomes even more complicated. Will information be leaked? Actually, for Rowan, there were only 3 pieces of information that truly needed to be kept secret. First, his identity as a transmigrator, and the related information in his mind. Second, his player abilities and innate special abilities. Third, information related to the recovery mage. Everything else wasn't a big problem. His melee ability was a public identity. As for the Azura's job ability, others might not be clear, but the Bone King definitely knew, as he had subordinates with that job. And currently, among the recovery mage's abilities, optimization could be disguised as high-level recovery magic. Then, where is that spellcaster? The girl looked around with a terrified expression. He's already dead. You can tell me what you all encountered. Chapter 29. This guy doesn't seem very smart. The girl was still a bit dazed. She thought back for a moment and then recounted the events of her small team one by one. Rowan had actually already learned this information through optimization, but he still had to ask openly. It was a very common story of an Adventurers Guild team being greedy, falling into a trap, and getting wiped out. Leaving aside the others, the girl's story was also very simple. She came from theocracy, and was a genius from theocracy herself, becoming a priest at a young age. She joined the Adventurers Guild for experience. Her parents had died young, leaving behind her and her younger sister. The strong will to survive she had shown earlier was largely due to her sister. She didn't hide anything, and her information was consistent with what Rowan had obtained through optimization. Why does that sound like a protagonist's background? Theocracy, what a troublesome existence, they even possessed world items. Now your teammates have all become undead, and that mage is also dead. What are your plans? What about that Death Knight? I used a certain method to ensure it can never appear again. I see, you have already entered that realm, an existence called hero rank. As a priest from theocracy, she knew quite a lot. I suppose so. Thanks to your help earlier, you pulled me back from the brink of death. You must have used a precious item, but my defiled body is not worth such an effort from you. Rowan couldn't quite follow her train of thought. I had already begun to transform into undead. Although you interrupted it, in truth, my body is already filled with the power of death. Although I still appear to be my original self, in fact, I am already considered undead. Kanina's face showed a pained expression. As someone from a priestly background, she could not accept her transformation into undead. Kanina gritted her teeth and said, "Please grant me release. The only thing I can't let go of is my younger sister. If possible, I would also like to ask you, when you have time, to bring my belongings back to her." Wait, you mean, I paid a huge price to save you from the brink of death. I paid a huge price to balance the power of life and death within you, and now, you don't want to live anymore. Rowan looked incredulous. Kanina's face flushed crimson, and she stammered, not knowing what to say. She knelt directly before Rowan. "I am very sorry, I've disappointed you." Rowan scratched his head. "But what can I do now? I am no longer human. Going back would only lead to me being immediately captured and burned to death, and it would also implicate my sister. Theocracy isn't the only place in this world. Besides, you're not completely undead, you're only half undead. But never mind, you'll work for me first. This. You don't mind me. I'm now a disgusting undead. Good heavens, you should say that to the Bone King's face. He should be very interested in discussing the undead issue with you. It doesn't matter. Anyway, you'll have to work hard for me, at least to let me break even." Kanina looked guilty. Although she didn't know what price Rowan had paid, to pull her back from the brink of death and restore her body to a perfect state, the cost must have been considerable. "Yes, Kanina will be at your service from now on." Rowan felt a bit helpless. If he wanted to deal with the Bone King and his group in the future, he absolutely couldn't do it alone. He needed people to gather information for him, earn money for him, and collect raw materials for him. If he had to do all the trivial tasks himself, it would be too much of a time waster. Rowan's efforts had to be focused on improving his strength. It's just that his first subordinate didn't seem very bright. Fine, this will do for now. What else could he do? Kill her? He would make do for the time being. Anyway, Rowan would not reveal his core secrets to her. Judging from the memories he obtained from her using optimization just now, this little girl's thoughts were still relatively pure, so she wouldn't betray him. Even so, Rowan still made 3 rules with her. First, she absolutely could not reveal any information about him, unless he allowed it. Second, she would sever ties with theocracy in the future and not return there. He would arrange for someone to pick up her sister later, and they would settle in the kingdom. Third, she would only obey his orders from now on, absolutely submitting to him. Kanina hesitated only slightly before agreeing. After all, her life was a bonus, every day she lived was a gain. Although Rowan was not reassured by a simple verbal agreement, he had no other option for now, so he could only proceed this way temporarily. Next, the two began to search this underground area. Rowan also kindly sent Kanina's 3 former teammates on their way. In this underground space, the first level was where soldiers were kept. The second level was where the black-robed mage lived, worked, and researched. Here, Rowan collected a large number of magic books and magic materials. This fellow used to be a magic fanatic. Indeed, the undead generally have no worldly desires, most of them are obsessed with magic. There was a lot of data, and Rowan put it all away to study slowly when he had time later. The third level was still under development, but a huge undead magic circle had already been set up. Rowan flipped through the research notes left by the black-robed mage and confirmed that it was a 6th-tier magic circle. 6th-tier ritual magic undead lair. This magic circle, if it existed for a long time, would continuously store death energy and convert the corpses within it into undead. The stronger the original strength of the corpses, the stronger the undead converted from them would be. And the strength of the undead within it would also slowly increase. If enough death energy accumulated, it could even help hero-rank undead break through their realm. This was a multifunctional magic circle. This thing was really good. Rowan threw some corpses he had collected into his backpack space. There were few corpses, but they were all tier 2 or above. He didn't plan to destroy this magic circle. On the contrary, he wanted to protect it, and then transport some corpses of powerful monsters to have them converted into undead. Then, he would harvest these undead. This would be his undead plantation. After taking all the items, leaving only the magic circle to continue accumulating death energy, Rowan left the cave with Kanina. After exiting, he also found a large rock to block the entrance, preventing it from being discovered by others. The two returned to the Adventurers Guild, and Kanina reported the death of her team. Of course, information about the black-robed mage, Death Knight, and similar details could not be revealed. She disclosed that the team had been ambushed and besieged by a 5th-tier undead and numerous high-tier undead, leading to the unfortunate deaths of the other 3, while she herself was rescued by the passing, undead slayer, Lord Rowan. At this point, Rowan's reputation rose once again. Chapter 30 Arrival at the Royal Capital. Rowan, who had been living a month-long life of slaying skeletons, could finally relax. Ostensibly, he would form a team with Kanina, named Horizon Squad. A very ordinary name with no imposing aura. Things were almost settled here, and Rowan was preparing to leave. Before that, he first returned to Carne Village. It had been a long time since he returned, and Carne Village was as peaceful as ever. This made Rowan, who was accustomed to fighting and killing, feel as if he had been separated from the world for ages. In reality, he had been gone for less than 2 months. Rowan brought back several barrels of wine for everyone in the village, and specifically brought many orichalcum ingots for his blacksmith teacher, Carl. As for Anri, Rowan gave her an introductory book on magic and a swordsman training manual. He remembered that Anri had a strong talent as a commander, but unfortunately, she was too young now, and had no opportunity to display it. After a night of joyful drinking with everyone in the village, Rowan bid farewell, and left the next morning. Anri watched Rowan leave with Kanina, a hint of envy in her eyes. Being an adventurer, it's truly wonderful. This guy became a orichalcum class adventurer so quickly, he's amazing. What about me? Can I also become an adventurer? In Anri's young heart, some different thoughts from before began to emerge. Clutching 2 books to her chest, she didn't know if she truly possessed such talent. Walking along the road to the royal capital, Kanina asked curiously, Lord Rowan, what are we planning to do in the royal capital this time? Open a blacksmith shop and forge. Forge. Kanina's mind didn't immediately grasp it. That's right, actually, I am a blacksmith. This time, I need to settle down for a while. You'll be responsible for helping me acquire materials, sell finished products, and so on, and I'll focus on forging. This? All right, I'll do my best. Rowan nodded with satisfaction. It was good to have someone share the burden. He didn't need to waste too much time and energy on meaningless things. Although Grand Blacksmith was already max level, it was somewhat shameful to say that he had only forged one longsword, severely underutilizing this profession. This time, Rowan planned to significantly improve his forging techniques, as well as the level of the heart forging method. Incidentally, he could also earn some money with his skills. The Bone King traversed over with the resources of an entire guild. Besides various high-level, even max-level subordinates, the guild also had various rare items, divine artifacts, guild weapons, and even world items. Rowan, on the other hand, had nothing. He could only rely on himself. The resource levels in this world were not high. Rowan needed to rely on his two production professions to manufacture high-level items. When the Bone King descends, he must at least forge divine artifact-level weapons. Weapons below divine artifact level would be useless against those monsters. Forging a divine artifact still had a long way to go. The two continued their journey. After a long distance, Rowan's eyebrow twitched. As expected, these embellishments are unavoidable. When they reached a certain section of the road, a group of people jumped out from the bushes. 3 people in front and 4 behind surrounded the two of them. Rowan observed their professions and levels, which were between 5 to 8. Their professions were warrior, rogue, and archer. Their strength was not high, enough to deal with ordinary people, but not enough for high-level adventurers. Kanina's expression was serious, and she aimed her magic staff at the enemies. Although she was a healer, she knew a couple of offensive spells. Hey, kid, hand over all your money. What a beautiful girl, this girl has to stay too. Hee hee, our luck is really good today. Hee hee hee. They had encountered highwaymen. TSK. These guys, their strength isn't high, but their guts are quite big. Facing these few bandits, Rowan was expressionless, but Kanina's eyes widened in anger. In this world, bandits were not uncommon. Nail Clipper had been part of a bandit group, and it was then that he unluckily encountered Shaltir. These guys were very weak and didn't offer much experience. Charge, dash, draw, slash. 4 people were directly cut in half by Rowan, while on the other side, 3 people were also dealt with by Kanina's spells. Too weak. Kanina inspected the bodies, then collected their valuables and handed them to Rowan. Rowan was very pleased with Kanina's sensibility. She even knew to collect spoils of war. When the journey is long, one always encounters various seasonings. They didn't encounter any more robbers later, but they did encounter many slimes, goblins, and other monsters like ogres and magic wolves along the roadside. Rowan killed them all effortlessly. Although the experience wasn't much, it was better than nothing. Without a carriage, the two traveled for 2 days before reaching the royal capital. Rowan used his Adventurer's Guild badge to waive the entrance fee. As expected, it was the royal capital. Its prosperity was incomparable to a border city like Erantal. The flow of people on the streets was enormous, with all sorts of people from various professions. Rowan also noticed some special industries, such as slavery and brothels. Behind these dark industries was the kingdom's largest underground dark organization, 8 Fingers. This organization had no idea how much money it had accumulated. When the time was right later, it could certainly be cleaned up. It could yield a large sum of money and eliminate a menace to the people, truly killing 2 birds with 1 stone. After entering the city, they first reported to the Adventurers Guild. His Horizon Squad was a Orichalcum-class team, which commanded respect wherever they went, even getting discounts at inns. The quests issued in the royal capital were also different from those in Erantal. In Erantal, quests were mostly related to clearing out monsters. While such quests existed in the royal capital, there were more of other types. For example, escort, sparring partner, teaching, and so on. Rowan temporarily had no plans to take quests. Reaching Orichalcum class for the team was enough. Adamantite would be too conspicuous and easily attract the attention of the Platinum Dragon Lord. Currently, Rowan did not have the ability to contend with the Platinum Dragon Lord. Although he couldn't defeat the Platinum Dragon Lord, dealing with humans was not a problem. The humans who could pose a threat to him were few and far between: the Theocracy's guardian, Zeshi's Etsumii, the old woman suspected to be one of the 13 heroes, the centuries-old vampire, Evil Eye, and the leader of the evil organization, Zuranon. The Empire's guardian, the old magic caster, although he had reached the realm of a flawed, Rowan was confident he could defeat him. As for the others, one could only say they posed a threat, not necessarily that he couldn't defeat them. It could be said that on the human side, there was nothing much to fear. Of course, this was only on the human side. Among non-human existences, there were many more powerful beings. This world held deep malice towards humans. The racial limit for humans was level 40, and those exceeding level 40 were basically non-human existences. Chapter 31, Iron Making. It is said that in even more ancient times, humanity's living conditions were far harsher. They were merely livestock, two-legged sheep, for higher beings. Later, 6 players transmigrated to this world and carved out a space for humanity to survive. These 6 players were respectfully called the 6 Great Gods, and the Theocracy is the nation that worships them. After that, there were the 8 Great Kings. These 8 transmigrators were not good people. They waged war against the native dragon race of this world and ultimately seemed to have all perished. There were also the 13 heroes from 200 years ago. Compared to the previous 2 waves, the 13 heroes were much weaker, and their levels in the game were not high. This is what's known publicly. Who knows how many more there are in secret? There are quite a few transmigrators in this world. According to the story's content, at the moment the game's servers shut down, all players in the game were transported to this world, just at different points in the timeline. And the guild that Bone King belonged to was one of the strongest guilds in the game. With access to all of the guild's resources, he undoubtedly possessed the ability to conquer the entire world. Just thinking about it was incredibly stressful. Getting stronger step by step, there are still more than 4 years left, so there's no hope. Not far from the Adventurers Guild was an entire street dedicated to equipment. Here, there were all sorts of blacksmith shops, second-hand equipment stores, magic potion shops, and more. This was an adventurer's paradise. Well, a paradise for the rich. If you didn't have money, it was best not to enter. Rowan took Canina around, finally finding a shop in a secluded alley at the corner of the trading street. This small shop was in an out-of-the-way location and business was poor, but the shop itself was quite large, and the items looked relatively complete. A sign above the shop read, Moby Blacksmith Shop. The owner was a grizzled old man, the kind who could barely swing a hammer. Rowan glanced at him. Profession level, 6 level blacksmith. Too weak. According to Rowan's observations, the blacksmith levels here varied. The highest could reach level 8, with most being around levels 4 to 6. Those lower than that were generally apprentices. Raising the level of a production profession is more difficult than a combat profession. Rowan felt that he was likely the only grand blacksmith in this world. A max-level blacksmith combined with other max-level professions has a prerequisite of level 35. One must reach the strength of an abnormal individual to become a grand blacksmith, so the difficulty is not small. Guest, are you looking to forge or repair equipment? As soon as they entered, a young girl came to greet them. She had golden hair tied in a large braid. She wasn't very old, probably only 14 or 15, with a few freckles on her face and a sunny smile. Rowan took a look. Blacksmith level 1, warrior level 1. She was a weakling. Excuse me, is this shop for sale? For sale. The girl looked bewildered, and the old man also opened his eyes and looked over. Yes, actually, I'm also a blacksmith, and it's a hassle to open a new shop here, so I'd like to just buy a blacksmith shop directly. Indeed, Rowan could only look for shops with little business like this one. Other shops would probably just kick him out. And this shop, with so few customers, probably wasn't far from bankruptcy. Canina silently followed Rowan, not speaking. He learned when synchronizing her memories earlier that this girl used to be quite outgoing, but her personality changed after the previous incidents, becoming quiet and reserved. The girl looked at the old man for help. The old man sized up Rowan for a few moments and then spoke, "You want to buy my shop?" "Ha, my conditions aren't low. I don't care much about money. This blacksmith shop has been open for 40 years, and business has only declined recently because of my age. If you want to inherit this blacksmith shop, first prove your ability." Rowan frowned slightly. What was going on? Buying a shop was this troublesome? He had to prove himself. And what about your 40 years, that has nothing to do with him? Never mind, I'll go look elsewhere. Hey, you young man. Why do you give up so easily? The old man jumped up. You try it. If your craftsmanship is good enough, and you accept one condition from me, I'll give you this shop for free. Rowan, who was about to leave, heard "for free," and immediately stopped in his tracks. How could there be such a good thing as a pie falling from the sky? Are you serious? Naturally. All right, light the fire, bring the hammer. The furnace was lit, and the iron ingot was placed inside. He'd start by forging a dagger to get back in practice. A dagger was still a good emergency weapon. Besides, Rowan still lacked good armor. However, forging armor was much more troublesome than weapons, so he'd consider that later. In the furnace fire, he heated the iron ingot until it was red hot, then clamped it onto the anvil and picked up the sledgehammer. He brought it down with a crash. Clang! Sparks flew, and the contents of the heart forging method reappeared in Rowan's mind. To forge with spirit, imbuing equipment with a soul. Rowan's expression was focused. In the world, only the hammer in his hand and the iron block remained. Following the techniques of the heart forging method, hammer after hammer struck the red-hot ingot, producing a ringing sound. As the heart forging method operated, his MP also began to slowly decrease. Although the heart forging method had no daily usage limit, it consumed MP when used. Speaking of which, neither blacksmiths nor grand blacksmiths had MP as their main attribute. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to sustain the heart forging method for long even if they used it. Only a stat monster, a hexagonal warrior like Rowan, could use it without restraint. Moby the old man hadn't paid much attention at first. But when the young man began to forge, he froze. What kind of technique was this? Was this some kind of forging method? Moby wasn't sure. Although he had been a blacksmith his entire life, his talent was average, he hadn't achieved much, and his horizons were very limited. But even he could tell that this young man's forging technique was extraordinary. The hammer fell continuously, like a song being played. Moby was completely immersed in it, and even the girl watched Rowan swing the hammer in a daze. In her eyes, her grandfather's hammering was one strike after another, mechanical and unremarkable. But in the young man's hands, that iron ingot seemed to come alive. It seemed to be singing a peculiar tune. Unconsciously, whether it was Moby the old man, the ponytail girl, or Canina, all their gazes were drawn. They watched Rowan forge iron, and for a moment, no one dared to speak. Could blacksmithing also be so pleasing to the eye? The ponytail girl mused inwardly, if this young man's blacksmithing was like playing a song, then her grandfather's blacksmithing was just random banging. There was simply no comparison. At this moment, Rowan's heart was completely immersed in blacksmithing, unaware of the changing situation outside. This world seemed to only consist of the sledgehammer in his hand, and the iron ingot before him. Chapter 32, Apprentice. Rowan underestimated the value of high-tier production professions. Currently, basic professions like blacksmiths, apothecaries, and alchemists are common. However, advanced production professions are completely unheard of. In fact, even basic production professions, if they exceed level 10, can be granted the title of master. The heart forging method, as the core skill of a grand blacksmith, is naturally extraordinary. After a long while, Rowan stopped his actions. Forging complete. Experience plus 900 HE. After forging equipment of this level, the experience provided was negligible. The short sword had already taken shape, although he hadn't learned appraisal skills yet. As a blacksmith and its creator, Rowan still knew its tier. This dagger's tier was lowest tier, probably around level 9, considered a top-grade item within the lowest tier, just one step away from the low tier. It could be used directly once a handle was attached. There were many reasons why it didn't reach the low tier, such as the low level of the heart forging method and the poor quality of the raw materials themselves. The equipment tiers in this world are divided into lowest tier, levels 1 to 10, low tier, levels 11 to 20, mid tier, levels 21 to 30, high tier, levels 31 to 40, highest tier, levels 41 to 50, legacy tier, levels 51 to 60, holy relic tier, levels 61 to 70, legendary tier, levels 71 to 80, and divine artifact tier, levels 81 to 90. Above that, there were also world items and 20. For Bone King and his group, items below the divine artifact tier held no value, only those at or above the divine artifact tier were worth noticing. Adventurers in this world generally use lowest tier equipment, or even common weapons that aren't even lowest tier. Many beginners use common weapons without any rank when they set out. Lowest tier equipment is already considered excellent. It's extremely difficult for an ordinary blacksmith using ordinary iron ingots to forge one. The first forging was lowest tier equipment, and the second was still lowest tier. Rowan was not satisfied. Rowan took some wood and made a handle for the dagger. The old man slowly walked over. Cough, kid, your skill is not bad. Oh? Would you like to show off your skills, old man? The old man's old face flushed, and he waved his hands repeatedly. Forget it, I'm already old, I'm afraid I'll break my back if I move again. If it were a few years ago, I could show you a thing or two and guide you. The ponytail girl rolled her eyes. She knew her grandfather was starting to brag again. Cough cough, I can give you this blacksmith shop for free. As for the condition, you have to take my granddaughter as an apprentice. How about it? Apprentice. Rowan looked at the ponytail girl. Although she wasn't exactly frail, she certainly wasn't strong either. Rowan even doubted if she could lift a hammer. Old man, do you think a girl is suitable for blacksmithing? Not to mention the difference in strength, facing the furnace every day will make one greasy, and the skin will become very rough. I know, but I'm not afraid. The girl, who had been silent, spoke up. I don't care about my appearance and I can train my strength. I just want to be a blacksmith. Why? Because besides blacksmithing, I can't do anything else. The girl said righteously. Rowan was at a loss for words for a moment. Let's forget about it. I'm actually also an alchemist. If you're willing, I can teach you that part of the knowledge. Ah, really? The girl seemed a little embarrassed. Of course. The little girl was very happy and quickly called him teacher. It was like taking on a small apprentice, but Rowan felt that he might not have that much time to teach others. The old man chuckled. I only hope Wind Chime can have a way to support herself. An alchemist is clearly more suitable for her. Since you are willing to take her as an apprentice, then let's sign a contract. Taking an apprentice, its value shouldn't be comparable to a blacksmith shop, right? Although he felt a bit strange, he liked free things, so he took the contract and signed his name. This shop, in this inexplicable way, came under Rowan's name. The shop's name will be changed to Rowan's Blacksmith Shop. From now on, I will only be responsible for forging. As for sales and similar tasks, you two will handle them. Old man, I'm hiring you as the salesperson for this shop. As for the salary, it will be according to the standard rate. What do you think? The old man chuckled. Of course, as long as you don't mind me. Canina. I'm here, Sir Rowan. Go and buy the shop next door. Afterwards, the shop next door will be responsible for selling alchemy products, and you will be responsible for selling items and purchasing raw materials. Yes. That's right, Rowan planned to develop both forging and alchemy simultaneously. After a brief explanation, Rowan continued his forging. Well, this boss seemed to be a workaholic. This was a good thing. The old man glanced at the orichalcum waist badge of the other party. As a blacksmith shop closely related to adventurers, the old man's information network was very developed. He knew all the big and small things happening in the Adventurers Guild. This young man in front of him was from an orichalcum team. He knew all the kingdom's orichalcum teams. These two unfamiliar faces were most likely the recently promoted Horizon team, and the team leader, the undead slayer Rowan, must be this young man. In fact, as soon as they stepped into the shop, the old man knew their identities, but he didn't directly expose them. He knew that this young man had no bad habits, and was not a bad person. The old man secretly sighed that he was already old, and didn't have many years left to live. Although he had previously tried to find an heir for himself, they were either ill-intentioned or had ordinary talent, and were completely incapable of inheriting the blacksmith shop. Only his granddaughter was left in the family. Once he passed away, his naive granddaughter would definitely not be able to hold onto the shop. Going bankrupt would be a good outcome. A girl alone without relatives would most likely be targeted by some bad people and fall into danger. Since that was the case, it was better to give away the blacksmith shop and find a backer. Entrusting his daughter to him should not be a problem. At least better than those people around. Moreover, he still had a few days left to live and could observe further. If this young man's situation was not right, he still had means of counteraction. The magic scrolls hidden in his hand and some special connections could all come in handy at critical moments. This young man in front of him had talent far surpassing his own, but he just didn't know about his alchemy level. The old man didn't know Rowan's strength. If he knew that he had killed a death knight not long ago, he wouldn't have such a ridiculous idea. Canina went to work, while Rowan fell into a workaholic state, constantly hammering and striking. The lowest tier items he forged were handed over to the old man for sale. Now, he just wanted to quietly forge iron. Chapter 33 The Top. More than 2 months passed quietly, and the kingdom remained as peaceful as ever. The nobles were still scheming against each other, the king maintained balance, and the princess, though young, was already beginning to show her potential. During this time, a small stir was created in the Adventurers' Street, next to the Adventurers' Guild. On this day, Rowan's blacksmith shop was surrounded by many people early in the morning. These people gathered for only one purpose, to snap up the works of Master Rowan. Master Rowan was a blacksmith master whose reputation had soared in the past 2 months. Everything that came from his hands, whether weapons or armor, was a masterpiece. If one could manage to buy one, it would be perfect for personal use, and even if not used, selling it on would still yield a small profit. Master Rowan was also a legendary figure. Not only had he reached orichalcum class strength himself, but the equipment he forged was also of very high quality, making him an absolute genius. Among those waiting to buy was a young man with a smile on his face. Although he appeared gentle, there was no emotion in his eyes. The others were there to buy equipment, only he had come with a mission. Open up. With a shout, everyone pushed forward noisily, but unfortunately, the shop was too small, allowing only 5 customers to enter at a time. The others could only wait in line outside. Though anxious, those in line stood quietly outside. Earlier, some had been disorderly, but after being beaten, they behaved. Orichalcum class was no joke. The number of high-level individuals in the kingdom, who could consistently overpower a orichalcum class could be counted on one hand. Master Rowan's output was not high, and his daily supply was limited. Even if one started queuing before opening, there was no guarantee of getting a turn. The hustle and bustle outside did not affect Rowan much. The old man was in charge out there, and he only needed to focus on his smithing. He swung the hammer in his hand with force, the continuous blows raining down like raindrops on the longsword. Over the past 2 months, Rowan had been practicing the heart-forging method during the day and studying magic-related knowledge and preparing alchemical potions at night, keeping him incredibly busy, even more so than during his college entrance exams. Although he was very tired, the gains were enormous. He had not only raised the heart-forging method to level 4 but also increased the alchemist's extraction to level 3, and he had gone to the Magic Guild to learn an important spell, Intermediate Appraisal. After the heart-forging method reached the 4th tier, he began to gather some high-quality materials, preparing to forge new weapons. As the final blow landed, a prompt appeared before Rowan. Intermediate equipment successfully forged. Experience plus 58,000. Rowan let out a long breath and cast an appraisal on the still glowing straight sword. Refined longsword. Level, Intermediate, 28. Magic, none. It was only intermediate, and a relatively high-grade intermediate at that. Rowan was quite satisfied. With his tier for heart-forging method and low-grade materials, he could forge intermediate equipment. If it were just ordinary non-attribute materials, it would at most be low-grade. But that was not enough. He tossed the longsword aside. This item could only be sold. Warm-up complete, it was time to get serious. He then took out the intermediate material, 100 refined fine steel. This material was very precious, used for forging higher-grade equipment, and each piece could sell for hundreds of gold coins. This material was not easy to come by. Even with money, it wasn't guaranteed to be available. Rowan had expended great effort to acquire it, only obtaining one piece in the past 2 months. An experienced blacksmith master could forge it into intermediate equipment. Intermediate equipment would fetch at least several hundred gold coins, possibly even over 1,000 gold coins, and was considered a masterpiece among masterpieces. However, it was only intermediate and far from enough. Optimization. A flash of white light passed, and Rowan's optimization energy plummeted by more than 50 points. At the same time, the material in his hand underwent some mysterious changes, and Rowan cast an appraisal on it. Refined 100 refined fine steel, material. Level, advanced. Let's see if optimized materials could forge even better weapons. Rowan began to strike hammer after hammer. Advanced materials were significantly more difficult to work with than low-grade materials. Ordinary low-grade materials took about half an hour to an hour to forge a weapon, while advanced materials took at least half a day. This demanded a high level of physical strength and mental focus from the smith, and the heart-forging method consumed a lot of MP. Only Rowan could manage to hammer it. An ordinary blacksmith, even if given the material, would be unable to strike it. After a long time, a longsword began to take shape. Only after the weapon was fully formed did Rowan stop his movements. Top-grade equipment successfully forged. Experience plus 540,000. He cast an intermediate appraisal on the straight sword. Top-grade longsword. Level, top grade, 43. Magic, none. Rowan breathed a sigh of relief. It had indeed succeeded. Forging top-grade equipment consumed a great deal of energy. He originally had more than half his MP, but after forging the advanced equipment, only a third remained. Moreover, advanced equipment provided a lot of experience, 10 times more than intermediate equipment. This made sense as there was an advanced grade in between. Although this experience seemed like a lot, it was actually quite low compared to the level. In these 2 months, by forging equipment, he had already leveled up 4 times, and had now officially entered the hero rank, rather than merely possessing hero rank combat power as before. Forging high-level equipment granted a lot of experience, but it was very mentally taxing. This was the first top-grade equipment Rowan had ever forged, but it wasn't completely finished yet. Rowan used the Grand Blacksmith's skill, Magic Infusion. Magic Infusion involved embedding magic into a weapon and constructing the magical patterns within it, making them one with the weapon. Special skills could not be infused, and while growth-oriented skills could be, the difficulty was immense. For the first infusion, it was better to choose a regular spell. You're the one, Dragon Thunder. Dragon Thunder was a 5th-tier spell, and its origin was quite peculiar. Rowan had recently found someone proficient in Goblin language, who helped him translate the Goblin King's spellbook. In the spellbook, the highest tier spell was this 5th-tier Dragon Thunder. Rowan's magical talent was not weak, but it still took him over half a month to master this spell. Consuming the remaining MP, he slowly began to infuse magic. After a long while, the construction was complete, and the attributes of the refined longsword changed to Advanced Straight Sword. Level, Advanced, 48. Magic, Dragon Thunder / the weapon is imbued with lightning power, allowing for a Dragon Thunder / to be unleashed with a strike, usable once per day. After infusing magic, the level increased by 5, and the enchanted weapon was much stronger than a plain one. Unfortunately, Rowan didn't know higher tier magic. If it were a 6th tier, or even 7th tier spell, would it be even more powerful? Furthermore, Rowan had not yet used the Grand Blacksmith's advanced skill, Spirit Forging, or the ultimate skill, Forbidden Forging. Both of these skills had very high requirements for equipment. Top-grade equipment was still too low level, and forcing the use of these two skills would cause the equipment to explode. Chapter 30 for Master Lua Wen. Supreme grade equipment is the limit Rowan can currently forge. This grade can only withstand magic infusion. As for Spirit Forging, it requires at least Legacy grade. The Grand Blacksmith's ultimate skill, Forbidden Forging, has even higher requirements. Even Saint Relic grade might not hold up, likely needing Legendary grade. There's no possibility of forging higher grade equipment in a short time. To forge stronger equipment, Rowan either needs to improve the level of his heart forging method or collect higher grade materials. Otherwise, even with optimization, supreme grade equipment is the highest grade Rowan can currently forge. Don't let Rowan's slight disdain for supreme grade equipment fool you. In reality, this weapon would be considered a national treasure if brought out. I'll use this as my main weapon for now. If he had this weapon before, he wouldn't have been so helpless against the Death Knight. Even without degradation, he could have slain the opponent. As for now, 3 moves would make the Death Knight kneel. The speed of strength improvement from focusing on forging is far less than from leveling up by fighting monsters, but once the grade of forged equipment increases, it's still barely acceptable. It's been almost 5 months since he transmigrated, and Rowan's attributes have grown to Attribute Panel. Level, 31. Jobs, Recovery Mage, Rare LV5, Grand Blacksmith, Advanced LV10, Grand Alchemist, Advanced LV6, Azura, Rare LV5, Mother of Life, Rare LV5. Innate Ability, Job Evolver. Justice Value, 80, Neutral. HP, 405, 40.5%. MP, 345, 34.5%. Physical Attack, 315, 31.5%. Physical Defense, 405, 40.5%. Agility, 315, 31.5%. Magic Attack, 345, 34.5%. Magic Defense, 455, 45.5%. Comprehensive Resistance, 320, 32%. Specialty, 370, 37%. Skill Points, 56. Experience Slot, 439,810/1 million. Passive Skills, Recovery Storage, 237 250ths, Limit Break, Artisan's Heart, Energy Expansion, Precision, Rune Mastery, High-Tier Fire Resistance, Killing Intent Perception, Will of Frustration, Azura's Body, All Anomaly Resistance, Death Rejection, Born from Death, Language of Life. Active Skills, Optimization, 3 times/day, Degradation, 3 times/day, Heart Forging Method, 5th tier, Overlimit Deterioration, 1 time/3 days, Extraction, 4th tier, Mana Infusion, Scouting Black Crow, 1st tier, Spirit Forging, 1 time/day, Azura/ 3 times/day, Forbidden Forging, 1 time/3 days, Immovable Wisdom King Mantra, 1 time/day, Immovable Wisdom King Strike, 1 time/3 days, Microscopic Eye, Alchemy Synthesis, 1 time / day, forbidden alchemy, 1 time / 3 days, life creation. First tier, soul stripping, 3 times / day, life reincarnation, 1 time / 7 days. Magic / martial arts, scouting black crow, first tier, lightning strike, first tier, lightning lance, second tier, martial art, drawing / intermediate appraisal, fourth tier, silver knight spear, fourth tier. Although he is currently a melee job, from the stats, his physical attack power is very low, while his defense, especially magic defense and resistance, is very high, making him practically a tank. The development of his attributes is somewhat unreasonable. Because all are rare jobs, his attribute values are comprehensively developed, making him a true all-rounder. At this level, it is estimated that no one's attributes can compare to his, not even dragons. The equipment Rowan sells to the public is all low grade and lowest grade. Even so, low grade is already a valuable weapon on this street. As for the mid-grade and the newly forged supreme grade, Rowan has no intention of letting them enter the market. Low-grade equipment is already quite good, mid-grade and supreme grade would be a bit too eye-catching. Rowan was busy forging in his shop, unaware that someone outside had already set their sights on him. The young man waited outside for a long time but didn't see Rowan, growing a bit impatient. TSK, that old Moby has really struck gold. In a blacksmith's shop not far away, the owner sat at the entrance. Looking at the long queue opposite and his own deserted shop, the owner felt a pang of bitterness. However, even if he was unhappy, the owner had to admit that the other party's skill was indeed high, and many times better than his own. He might not even forge a few good weapons in a month, but the other party had them every day, and occasionally even advanced-grade equipment that he could never forge in his lifetime. Alas, why is the gap between people so wide? Boss, do you know anything about Master Rowan from Moby's blacksmith shop? Have you seen him? The young man, with a smile on his face, came over and asked. Heh! Trying to gather information. Don't you know I'm the tightest-lipped person here? Known as Master Elvin, whose mouth is like cast iron. The boss scrutinized the young man before him, sneering. It wasn't until the other party slipped him a silver coin that his previously stern face changed, revealing a smile. Oh, of course, for a friend, there's no need to be so serious. This kid is really generous, giving a silver coin just like that, as if it's not money, Master Elvin muttered in his heart. Then tell me about Master Rowan. Of course, besides old Moby and his granddaughter, probably no one knows Master Rowan better than me. That Master Rowan isn't very old, probably in his 20s. He has very rare black hair, and his appearance doesn't look like someone from the kingdom. He appeared about 2 months ago, and bought old Moby's blacksmith shop when he arrived here. Black hair? Yes, he's not only a blacksmith but also the captain of the Adventurers Guild's Horizon team, nicknamed Undead Slayer. His strength is also very formidable. And the alchemy shop next door is run by his teammate Canina. That Canina should be an alchemist, her skill is decent but she's not as famous as Master Rowan. I see. Then tell me about old Moby and his granddaughter. This. All right, Moby. In a flash, the old man told everything he knew to the strange young man before him. Afterward, the young man didn't continue chatting with him but squatted outside the shop, waiting. What he didn't know was that a crow was perched on the eaves nearby, quietly watching him. After dark, the shop closed. Sure enough, he saw a black-haired young man come out, and then a girl from the alchemy shop next door also left with him. The young man followed them discreetly. However, the path became increasingly secluded, and eventually, he somehow turned into an alley. The young man knew he had probably been discovered, but he didn't care. Who are you, and what do you want following me? Rowan turned around, looking at the person who had been tailing him. Chapter 35 Soul Deprivation. The opponent clearly had ill intentions. Canina secretly gripped her magic staff, waiting for Rowan's command to deliver a fierce blow. Heh, you must be Master Rowan, right? The title of Master did sound pleasant and Rowan smiled. That's me. Master Rowan, Minister Ciro invites you to join Eight Fingers. With your talent and strength, you can certainly hold a high position within Eight Fingers. Perhaps you could even compete for a minister's position. Maybe you don't know about Eight Fingers, let me introduce them to you. Eight Fingers. No need. I am quite familiar with the organization Eight Fingers. Just rats hiding in the dark. Rats? The young man was stunned. Eight Fingers was the most powerful underground organization in the kingdom, engaging in all sorts of deceitful activities. Slave markets, brothels, and the like were mostly under their control. Additionally, they also handled assassinations, potions, and other businesses. Some considered them venomous snakes hidden in the dark, others called them devils, but no one had ever thought of them as rats. Rats? Master Rowan, you might not understand our situation. I understand perfectly, and I'm not interested in joining Eight Fingers. How about you retreat now? The young man's expression turned grim. Master Rowan, you should reconsider. Orichalcum class strength is indeed powerful, but there are many within Eight Fingers who are stronger than you. In the royal capital, no one has ever refused Eight Fingers. Stronger than me. These guys really are frogs in a well. After the Bone King's arrival, they were all instantly defeated by the Bone King's old butler, one punch each. That old butler was one of the few benevolent characters in the Bone King's faction. Rowan used to like this character a lot, and his strength was also among the top-ranked among the floor guardians. It's just a pity that he was absolutely loyal to the Bone King. What a shame. What if I refuse? Rowan glanced at the opponent. Level 15, 2 basic professions. This strength was decent in the royal capital, equivalent to somewhere between Mithril and Orichalcum according to the Adventurers Guild classification. Then I shall test your strength. I believe you will change your mind. The young man whistled and several black-clad swordsmen emerged from the darkness. Rowan swept his gaze over them. Their strength was all between levels 10 to 15. Their levels were too low, completely uninteresting. Canina, except for the leader, these small fry are yours to practice on. Yes. Arrogant. The black-clad figures charged towards them together. Kanina's body sprouted bones, and soon she transformed into an undead creature covered entirely in bones. This was her second aspect, the undead aspect. Two-faced aberrants by day, they were devout priests, by night they were terrifying undead. Life and death, faith and mortality, different powers merged within her body. The few men paused, seemingly startled by Kanina's bizarre transformation, but Kanina wouldn't wait for them. With a flick of her magic staff, bone spears erupted from the ground. Two black-clad men were too slow to dodge and were impaled. Negative ray, grasp of the dead, bone spear pierce. Kanina cast one undead spell after another with stable and elegant movements. A few deaths were nothing in her eyes, there was no ripple of emotion. Rowan also felt a little emotional from behind. This little girl, originally a good person with over 100 justice points, in just 2 months, her justice points had already dropped to single digits. Race really does affect justice points. The formerly kind girl now killed people without a second thought. If left unchecked, she might delve deeper into the realm of evil. Ordinary people do not have player panels, they cannot grow by killing monsters. Killing monsters can only hone their martial skills. To become stronger, they only have the paths of training, studying, and practicing magic. Kanina was very diligent, desperately studying and practicing magic every day. After her transformation into a semi-undead, her human shackles seemed to have been broken. In these 2 months, she had progressed rapidly, gaining 2 levels. For ordinary people, this was a leap forward in strength. Seeing his subordinates easily dealt with, the young man's face greatly changed. He stopped making threats and turned to run. But how could Rowan let him escape? With a wave of his hand, a transparent figure was pulled out from inside the opponent by Rowan. This was a skill of the Mother of Life, soul stripping. The transparent soul looked terrified, but it had no power to resist in Rowan's hand. This wasn't over yet. Rowan placed his hand on the soul, and power infiltrated the opponent's soul to modify it. This was the ability of soul stripping, which could only be used against enemies with unstable wills or those more than 10 levels below oneself. If the conditions were not met, the soul modification would fail and directly collapse. And some powerful, strong-willed beings could not even have their souls extracted. However, if it couldn't be extracted, it would still cause soul damage to the opponent. This skill was extremely bizarre and powerful, and this was the first time Rowan had used it. Soon, his soul was completely modified by Rowan. Rowan implanted his own will deep within his soul, altering his innermost thoughts. From then on, he became a loyal follower who only obeyed Rowan's commands. Rowan returned his soul, and the corpse lying on the ground came back to life. Soul stripping was not just about stripping, it included abilities such as separation, restoration, soul modification, and soul damage. Among mental magic, there were also some control spells, such as human-only charm, all-species charm, and so on. People under control would completely obey the caster's words. There was even a world item like a lure that could ignore any level and resistance to completely control an opponent. Shaltir, a max-level subordinate of the Bone King, was controlled by this world item, and the user was an ordinary human below level 50. Later, she only broke free from control after dying and being resurrected. Rowan's soul stripping naturally couldn't compare to a world item, but it was still much stronger than abilities like all-species charm. Souls modified by Rowan were no longer controlled by charm-type skills, but they could not immune themselves to the control of world items. Furthermore, the loyalty effect of a person whose soul had been modified was permanent, while charm-type skills had a time limit. The young man respectfully knelt before Rowan, telling him everything he knew. This guy clearly wasn't the type with a firm will. Kanina didn't know what kind of magic this was. She lowered her head, not daring to ask. In her eyes, Rowan was synonymous with power, mystery, and invincibility. Her initial gratitude for saving her life had now transformed into deep reverence. After obtaining the information, Rowan first returned home with Kanina. He bought 2 houses nearby, one for Kanina and her sister to live in, and the other for himself. He wondered if it was the genes of the Flower Kingdom at play. Once settled, he wanted to buy a house. Chapter 36, Crow and the Artificial Human Orca. Returning home, a middle-aged man dressed in black, like a butler, bowed to Rowan. "Welcome back, master." The man had a mustache and looked very steady. This fellow was a unique life form Rowan created through his ability. He couldn't create a second one. His soul originated from Rowan. If Rowan died, he could revive in him. Similarly, if he died, Rowan could revive him by expending MP, which was quite unreasonable. Moreover, when he was created, his level was even higher than Rowan's. Probably no one could have predicted that Rowan would become a mother of life at a low level, resulting in the bizarre situation where the master's level was lower than his summons. Rowan also sculpted the face of this artificial human. Alka, human. Level, 50. Justice points, 0. Professions, warrior, LV 15, paladin, LV 15, sword saint, LV 10, swordmaster, LV 5, Azura, LV 5. Alka was the name Rowan gave him. The Azura profession was inherited from Rowan's main body, and other professions were matched according to the Azura profession. Alka was a sword master, and his swordsmanship far surpassed Rowan's main body. As a soul-created being of Rowan, he not only inherited some of Rowan's professions, but his soul was also naturally very close to Rowan's. The two could communicate telepathically regardless of distance. Rowan could know his location and status in real time. However, the reverse was not true. Alka could not know Rowan's status. Alka would be Rowan's most trusted and valued subordinate, and many important tasks would be entrusted to him. "Alka, come out with me. I have something for you to do." "Yes." Stepping out the door, Rowan looked up to see several crows flying into the distance from the rooftop in the darkness. Rowan could see their attributes. Dark Crow, Monster. Level, 5. Justice points, 0. Profession, Magic Crow, LV5. These crows were not wild monsters but creatures Rowan created through the skill, life creation, primarily used for intelligence gathering. It was unclear how this skill judged. It was bound to creatures like crows. If it were bound to dragons, that would be formidable. These crows had relatively average combat power, but their reconnaissance ability was formidable. They compensated for Rowan's lack of scouting methods, and their flight ability made up for Rowan's lack of mobility. These were Rowan's exclusive familiars. Their current low level meant their intelligence wasn't very high, but their future was promising. Currently, Rowan was level 31, theoretically able to create 31 life forms, but he had only created 10. The utility of the life creation skill was decent, but the strength of the created life forms depended on the skill level, and the highest level the skill could reach was level 10, meaning the limit for created life forms was level 70. So creating some to assist him was fine, but expecting them to fight against the Bone King and his forces was unrealistic. Level 70 was merely the level of cannon fodder, and the Great Tomb could easily produce a pile of them. Only above level 90 could they barely be considered combat power. Rowan, accompanied by Alka and his newly recruited subordinate, headed towards the location of Eight Fingers' headquarters. The black-clad subordinate was barely considered a high-ranking member of Eight Fingers and knew quite a lot. In the house next door, seeing Rowan leave without her, Canina felt some anxiety. She was still too weak and completely useless. Although anxious, she was helpless. She didn't know why, but she was now starting to lose interest in everything around her, focusing solely on Rowan. This strange change made her somewhat irritated. Her sister, seeing her like this, was a little worried. "Sister, would you like something to drink?" "I'll get it for you." Thank you," Canina said, her eyes still fixed on the window. Eight Fingers had been established for some years, and they had various underground strongholds in the capital. Led by the insider, Rowan and Alka went directly to the headquarters. Because of the black-clad youth's guidance, they entered without even being questioned. According to intelligence, they happened to have a meeting today, and all 8 department heads were gathered together, which saved Rowan the trouble of searching for them one by one. When the black-clad youth appeared with Rowan and Alka, Jierua, the head of Eight Fingers' security department, was talking to several other department heads. Eight Fingers' 8 departments were responsible for security, prostitution, gambling, drugs, assassination, theft, finance, and smuggling. Among them, Jierua, the head of the security department, was the strongest. Are you the recent Master Rowan?" Jierua's mouth curved into a strange smile. Seeing Rowan and the others enter, they showed no unusual expressions, only assuming that their subordinate had brought Rowan back. In fact, thinking that way was not wrong. The other department heads of Eight Fingers also looked at Rowan, scrutinizing him, with various expressions: admiration, suspicion, wariness, and disdain. Rowan looked over. Among these people, Ciro had the highest level, around 26. The others were not as strong as Jierua, and some department heads were even only around level 10. Even low-level enemies are still meat. "Alka, keep an eye out for me. Don't let anyone here escape." "Yes. You brat." Rowan had no time for idle chatter with a group of dead men. 4th tier magic, Silver Knight's Lance. 2nd tier magic, Lightning Lance. 2 spells were cast in succession, but the damage seemed ordinary, only instantly killing 2 enemies. You deserve to die." As the strongest department head, Ciro began applying buffs to himself. Roar, Owl's back. Rowan had no interest in taking his time. He immediately began his slaughter. He charged forward so quickly that the people nearby could barely discern his movements. Quick draw slash. The arc of sword chi instantly killed a group of small fries, or whoever they were around him. Normal attack. The illusionist, the head of the slave department, was instantly killed. Azura slash, that so-called space slash, was instantly killed. Space slash. That name is too domineering, but unfortunately, his strength is too weak. How could such a weak guy have the audacity to call it space slash? As a result, he was instantly killed by Rowan without even getting a move off. And you, Undead King, a mere undead dares to call himself the Undead King. Charge, quick draw slash. The so-called Undead King was now deader than dead, and even some department head next to him was caught in the crossfire, dying directly from the AoE. Half the people were dead and Ciro, the head of the security department, hadn't even finished applying his buffs. He gasped, stopped buffing, and immediately turned to run. Are you kidding? Waiting here would be suicide. He was very clear that such a terrifying individual was absolutely not someone he could resist. Even 10 more of him wouldn't be enough to fight against him. Chapter 37, Dungeons and Elves. However, before Jia could even reach the door, a figure dressed in a suit, looking very much like a gentleman, appeared before him. Before he could react, he was kicked in the chest and sent flying backward, smashing an unknown number of tables. If Rowan hadn't instructed otherwise, Ochre's kick would have sent him to the afterlife. Rowan killed everyone with 1 strike each, except for 3 individuals. Although these humans weren't very strong, they provided a considerable amount of experience, totaling hundreds of thousands of experience points. The 3 remaining were Minister Jia, the Poisoner Hilma, and 1,000 Kills Mambust. No, don't kill me, I'll do anything, Hilma said with a look of terror. 1,000 Kills was so scared his face turned pale, unable to utter a single word. Only Ciro managed to remain somewhat calm. This guy is too strong, he had never encountered such a powerful enemy. Ciro's level was too high for soul stripping to be effective. Never mind, with a sudden lunge, a drawing sword slash took him down. He wore an expression of disbelief until his death, unable to comprehend how he had been killed so easily. The remaining 2 became even more terrified, they wanted to escape. Soul stripping. Soul stripping. The souls of both individuals were extracted simultaneously, then Rowan reformed them. After the reformation, he put them back. Since you were so bad, it's good to have you remade. The 2, whose souls had been reformed, respectfully knelt before Rowan. They now recognized Rowan as their master. Even if Rowan ordered them to commit suicide immediately, they would execute the command without hesitation. The ability of soul stripping was simply too unreasonable. Alka, from now on, I have a few tasks for you to do. Please command, even if it requires my life, I will not hesitate, Alka said meticulously. When Rowan created this character, he set him to be absolutely loyal, with a flexible mind, diligent, with completing his master's tasks as his primary goal, meticulous but not pedantic in his work. In short, he added many good attributes. He would be a very good subordinate. First, I entrust these 3 to your management. You are to dig out all intelligence on 8 Fingers, shut down the poison, gambling, and slavery departments. Collect all resources of 8 Fingers, but alchemy materials, forging materials, and magic books must be collected and given to me. Second, starting today, your work, in addition to diligently cultivating, will be to manage this organization, collecting all sorts of intelligence for me, especially information on powerful creatures and precious materials, and helping me collect materials for forging and alchemy. Third, use 8 Fingers resources to expand its scale, but also be careful not to be too ostentatious. Alka bowed his head and said, yes, I will definitely do these things well. Then I'll leave it to you. One more thing, no matter what, you must pay attention to protecting your own life. Although there aren't many strong individuals in the kingdom, there are still 1 or 2 who are not weaker than you, such as a vampire girl, and an old woman known as the 13 Heroes. Yes. Rowan turned and left. He didn't want to deal with these trivial matters. His precious time should be spent on improving his strength, learning magic, and practicing forging and alchemy. 5 years is a very short time, and cannot be wasted. After Rowan left, Ochre finally raised his head. There was a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Ah, he wished he could continue to stay by his master's side, managing everything at home for him, conversing with him, and learning from him. Alas, such opportunities will likely be rare in the future. His gaze became firm. For now, he must first do what his master instructed, absolutely without any mistakes. His gaze swept over the three, who were now his subordinates. First, he needed to clarify the intelligence. How many people did Eight Fingers have in total? Where was the money hidden? Where were the slaves, and where were the resources stored? The three, whose souls had been reformed, were now very respectful, practically telling him everything. After all, Rowan had already instructed that from now on, they were Ochre's subordinates. After clarifying the situation, Ochre sent 1,000 kills to collect various materials and magic books. As for himself, he had the other two take him to see where the slaves were held. The place where the slaves were located was underground in a certain courtyard in the capital. The space here was vast, like a dungeon, holding numerous slaves. Most of them were young human girls. To prevent any accidents, Alka put on a mask to cover his face after entering the underground area. The imprisoned individuals in the dungeon now looked at Ochre with terrified expressions. Ochre frowned slightly and asked Hilma next to him, "Do these slaves know where they are?" Although Hilma was the Minister of Poison, she knew quite a bit of intelligence from various departments. This person was originally born a prostitute and managed to climb to the position of minister, which was very inspiring in itself. Her intelligence and methods were top-notch. Later, she was captured by Bone King's subordinates and underwent a series of transformations by the Insect King. Lord Alka, they were all put in sacks when they were captured, so they don't know where they are. All right then, put the common people in bags and quietly send them back. Keep the other races for now. Yes, my lord. Keeping these common people was useless, and the master had said to close those 3 departments. Besides the majority of young human females, there were also some non-humans. Orcs were quite numerous, and there was even an elf. These guys certainly had some tricks, managing to even get an elf. Orcs included both males and females. The males usually had some strength and would be sold to merchant caravans as slave guards, while the females were mostly very young and beautiful, their purpose self-evident. The sole elf, whose strength was not weak, was obtained by Eight Fingers with great effort and was their most valuable commodity. Alka inspected them one by one. In their eyes there was fear, anger, and despair. Orcs were very far from human settlements, so sending them back was unrealistic and too much effort. They could only be assimilated. As for the elf, Sai, she truly was troublesome. Alka stood before her. The elf raised her head and looked at Alka. In her eyes, anger was hidden, and also confusion. This man before her did not seem to be the leader here. Could he be a buyer? A chill ran down her spine. Alka observed her. Although he didn't have a player template, he had his own means of detection. Her level was around 20, which was not too strong. Archers were relatively common among the elves, and their strength was not weak. Unfortunately, their reproductive capacity was too low, making them a small race on the continent. Among humans, elves were considered absolutely high-value treasures. After Eight Fingers found an elf, they didn't lay a hand on her, only wanting to use her to curry favor with a great noble. Unfortunately, they were wiped out by Rowan before they could achieve this goal. Chapter 38 Target, the Old Man of the Empire. Alka's expression remained calm despite the elf's dagger-like gaze. Don't look at me like that. The leaders of this organization have all been killed by my master, so your revenge is complete. Your master? Had that woman behind you, she's a leader too, isn't she? She has already joined us. She is one of our own. The elf stared at Alka, as if trying to see through him. So you're going to hand me over to your master? Bah, what a disgusting human. Alka was unmoved. Although I haven't reported your matter to my master yet, I estimate that my master wouldn't be interested in you. A mocking smile appeared on his lips. The elf glared furiously. It's impossible for you to go back. Either die here, or join us. Of course, if you can defeat me, then you can go wherever you want. Alka drew his long blade. With a flash of light, both the iron bars and the hand and foot chains that bound the elf shattered into several pieces. The elf looked disbelieving, somewhat confused, unsure what this man intended to do. A bow and a quiver of arrows were thrown at her feet. Let's go outside. You can unleash your strongest combat power in a spacious area. If you win, you can leave directly. If you lose, you'll become my subordinate. Of course, you can also choose to stay here. Are you out of your mind? Alka ignored her. The elf gritted her teeth and followed him out. Outside, in the empty courtyard, the two stood facing each other from a distance. Are you serious? I won't hold back. The elf held her bow and arrows, her expression serious. Make your move. My name is Natalia. She raised her hand and shot, using the martial skill, quick shot. However, the opponent's figure blurred, and he actually dodged it. Natalia's brows furrowed in surprise. Quick shot was swift and extremely difficult to evade. She shot and retreated simultaneously, but either her arrows were dodged or cleaved by the weapon. Martial skill, power shot. Martial skill, lightning arrow. No, it was no good. The opponent's speed was inhuman, she was no match at all. This oppressive power, only the elders of her tribe possessed it. No, even the elders were not his match. Was this still a human? A black sword glow sliced past her. The sword glow's momentum was undiminished, splitting the house behind her in half. Cold sweat broke out on Natalia's forehead. The opponent said faintly, "You lost." Natalia gave a wry smile. All right, I can be your subordinate but not as a slave. Otherwise, I'd rather choose death. You'll need my master's permission first. Natalia's expression became awkward. Alka communicated with Rowan in his mind. As Rowan's creation, he inherently possessed the ability to communicate telepathically with Rowan. Soon, he received Rowan's affirmative reply: there was an elf. Rowan, who had already returned to his room, was also very surprised. He hadn't expected to encounter an elf here. The elf kingdom was in the northwest corner of the continent. Its king was a transmigrator from a long time ago, a son of the 8 Greed Kings. His strength was very high, between level 70 to 80, and he could summon an 87th level primal earth elemental spirit stronger than himself. The current Rowan was not his match, but he would definitely go and see him once his level increased in the future. The 8 Greed Kings had done many things when they transmigrated to this world, and there might still be many anomalies. If the earliest 6 great gods were positive figures who saved humanity, then the 8 Greed Kings were negative characters, as could be seen from their titles. As for the later 13 heroes, they were much weaker compared to the previous 2 waves. Once his strength was sufficient, he would have to study the items left behind by these predecessors to see if he could find anything useful. The next morning, Alka collected the items and delivered them to him. Among them were a pile of magic books, which Rowan put into his storage space. Learning magic was a slow process. With less than 5 years until the Bone King's arrival, a systematic study would certainly be too late. Although he had previously acquired some knowledge from Canina through optimization, it was too little. In a while, he would have to seek out Flutter, the guardian of the Empire. This legendary figure, over 200 years old, was obsessed with magic throughout his life and held the profession of immortal. Although human, his level exceeded human limits, probably around 41 to 42. He was very strong, practically a walking treasure trove. If he could acquire some of his experience, it could save a lot of time. In addition to magic books, Alka also brought various materials, including forging and alchemy materials. Rowan looked at them. Most were ordinary materials suitable for practice. A small portion of high-grade materials could be optimized and then used for forging. He would be busy next. After acquiring a large pile of materials, Rowan plunged into endless work of forging and refining alchemy potions. He was busy for a full month until all the materials were used up. During this time, his level increased by 2, heart forging method rose to level 5, and extraction rose to level 4. After working continuously for over 3 months, Rowan also became a bit irritable. The materials were used up, so it was time to move around. After greeting Kanina and Alka, telling them to cultivate and work hard in the royal capital, Rowan set off alone. With 8 fingers accumulating wealth, Rowan no longer cared about the meager rewards from quests for the time being. Maintaining his Adventurers Guild rank at Orichalcum was perfect, not too high, not too low, with a slight reputation but not enough to attract undue attention from others. For this trip, Rowan had already planned his itinerary. First, he would check on Anna in Carne Village, then go to the Tobu Great Forest to hunt some monsters and collect alchemy materials and energy. Next, he would go to Cat's Plain, convert monster corpses into undead, and then kill them again. After all this, he would go to the Great Swamp to find the lizard men. He had no grudge against the lizard men, but they possessed an item he absolutely had to obtain. The lizard men were creatures of the swamp region, one of the earliest races to join the Bone King's faction. Their strength was only mediocre. They possessed 4 treasures within their tribe. These so-called treasures were actually just intermediate or advanced items, nothing special. Rowan didn't care for them at all. The only one he was interested in was Frozen Fong Pain, one of the treasures. This weapon was crafted from the first ice that ever formed on a certain lake that never froze. Its level was not high, possibly only intermediate, 20 to 30, or at most advanced, 30 to 40. This weapon was later acquired by the Bone King, and after modification, its power increased, making it a good weapon. Rowan suspected that this weapon was only slightly processed raw material, and had not undergone any forging. After all, ice as a material doesn't sound like it can be forged. If that were the case, then the potential of this item would be enormous, definitely some kind of special material. Therefore, he had to make the trip no matter what. Chapter 39, Harvesting Vegetables in Tobu Forest. Going to the Tobu Great Forest on foot would be quite a letdown. Ordinary mounts, like horses, would be too slow and difficult to manage. As for monster mounts, they could easily reveal his information, so Rowan had no intention of getting one from the start. Therefore, there was only one choice, his familiars, the crows. Rowan didn't need to worry about the capital. The equipment and alchemy tools he left behind were enough for the shop to sell for a year. After leaving the city, he summoned 2 crows, grabbed their feet, and let them carry him as he flew. Rowan's familiars were not ordinary crows, but magical ones with magical power. Although they were only tier 1, their strength was considerable, capable of carrying off a sheep with ease, so 2 crows carrying Rowan was effortless, and their speed was very fast. There was only one drawback: the posture was too undignified, completely lacking the demeanor of a master. Moreover, the experience was terrible, incomparable to riding on the back of a monster. Rowan, completely disregarding his image, rushed all the way and arrived at Carne Village in just over half a day. Henry was very happy to see Rowan. Rowan was also very happy, and a new profession, warrior, had appeared in Henry's profession column. Had she embarked on the path of a warrior? Henry's comprehension was still very strong. Over the next few days, Rowan taught her his martial art, Azura Slash. This skill was honed by Rowan during his battles in the Cat's Plain. It was his unique martial art. It was a pity that he would have to follow the magical path later, so this martial art might have to rely on Henry to be carried forward. Only after she had grasped the basic essentials did Rowan leave the village. As long as she practiced diligently, she would eventually master it. There wasn't much more Rowan could teach her. After leaving Carne Village, Rowan headed straight for the Tobu Great Forest. The Tobu Great Forest had many monsters, but the strongest 3 rulers were only hero rank, completely incapable of posing a threat to Rowan. As long as he didn't foolishly touch the seal deep within the forest, he could walk unimpeded. However, even a mosquito's leg is still meat. As long as it was a monster, Rowan would instantly kill it. If the opponent's strength reached level 20 or above, Rowan would also collect its corpse. The higher the level of the corpse, the greater the probability of cultivating high-level undead. Encountered a group of ogres. Kill. These things had astonishing regenerative abilities, but in the face of absolute power, they had no chance to recover. Encountered a group of big goblin tribes. Kill. Big goblins were stronger than ordinary goblins, but that was about it. Their level wasn't high, but they were numerous. Encountered a group of magic wolves. Kill. Magic wolves were very fast and excelled at group combat, but unfortunately, no matter how fast they were, they couldn't compare to Rowan. Gallows spider. Kill. This thing looked really disgusting. Forest longworm. Isn't this just a snake? Kill. Tobu high-tier fierce tiger. Ho, this one was quite handsome, and its level was high. In his previous world, it would have been a protected animal, but here, no one protected them. Kill. Jumping leech. Disgusting. Kill. Giant beetle. This one was handsome, but its intelligence was too low, difficult to communicate with. Kill. Other hellhounds, big lizards, and the like were also directly killed. 3 days had passed, and Rowan had now entered the depths of the Tobu Great Forest. He had killed quite a few monsters during this period, and his level had even increased by 1 due to the frenzied slaughter. In these 3 days, an estimated tens of thousands of monsters had died by his hand. High-level suppression, coupled with the crow's reconnaissance, made the killing efficiency very high. It was just a pity that he hadn't encountered Bone King's big hamster. He didn't know if it was just bad luck, or if the commotion he caused was a bit too large, and the other party had detected him. Rowan searched for a while. He didn't find the big hamster, but he did find one of the 3 overlords, an ogre. To be precise, it was the ogre's superior race, the ogre mage. The ogre leader was named Gu. With his regenerative ability, he was quite difficult to deal with. Even if his limbs were severed, they could grow back. But he was facing Rowan. One Azura slash, followed by a fireball, and he was as dead as could be. The other ogres were also dealt with incidentally. When he encountered higher level ones, he would absorb some energy. A week quietly passed. During this week, Rowan cleared out a large number of monsters. Almost all of the high-level monsters in the entire Tobu Great Forest were cleared out. He didn't encounter any powerful characters, but he did find many precious herbs. These were excellent as alchemy materials. As Rowan was about to leave, one of his crows suddenly lost contact. It died, silently, completely without reaction. Rowan quickly controlled the surrounding crows to head towards the location of the death, while he himself rushed in that direction. However, the crows didn't find anything. Suddenly, another crow died. Rowan's expression became serious. The surrounding crows were very close, but none of them detected anything unusual. However, the location had narrowed down. The search area of the numerous crows narrowed. Suddenly, another crow was hit. This time, through the vision of the other crows, the clue was finally discovered. It was an invisible monster. By the time Rowan arrived, the attacked crow had already been eaten. Although the monster was invisible, the glaring level above its head couldn't be hidden. Camouflage lizard, monster. Level, 25. Justice value, -50. Profession, petrification lizard, LV15, lizard mage, LV5, illusionist, LV5. What an interesting creature. Is it a variant of the petrification lizard? However, in Rowan's eyes, the opponent's invisibility was no different from being naked. He rushed over and with just one slash, cut off the opponent's head. This monster was a bit special. Although it was a petrification lizard, it must have mutated. Like a chameleon, its body was full of good materials. He extracted the blood and removed the leather to make materials. When he had time later, he might be able to use it to make an invisible cloak. However, limited by the level of this monster, the level of this equipment would not be too high. With things here done, Rowan, carrying a spatial inventory full of corpses, headed for the cat's plane. During this time, some death aura had accumulated in the cave. Rowan threw all the corpses above level 20 inside to convert them, sealed the cave entrance, and then headed towards the Empire. Why does it feel like farming? He could come here periodically to harvest a wave in the future, but not too frequently. Rowan estimated that harvesting once a year would be about right. Thinking about it carefully, he wouldn't be able to harvest many times. In addition, the demi-human hills could also be harvested, as well as the orc territories outside of human influence. Although there were places to harvest, none of them could be done openly, as it would easily attract the attention of the Platinum Dragon Lord, which would be troublesome. Although he might not necessarily die, his growth would definitely be restricted. Chapter 40 Renas. The kingdom and the empire are adjacent, not far from each other, and as adventurers, it is very convenient to travel between various countries. Flutter, the guardian of the royal capital, and one of the only 4 abnormal magic casters among humans, possessed considerable strength, and a natural unique ability, the Eye of Foresight, which allowed him to discern an enemy's power. At this point, Blood Emperor had only been on the throne for a while, and was in the midst of drastic reforms. Blood Emperor was a diligent and ambitious emperor, and even Bone King secretly learned from him. After Bone King's arrival, Flutter, the Empire's guardian, joined Bone King's faction for the sake of magic. After the strongest warrior captain was publicly killed and then resurrected in the arena, Bone King, displaying his invincible power, easily brought the Empire under his control as a vassal. Blood Emperor of the Empire was considered relatively good, unlike other countries where the king of the kingdom was killed and the country annexed, or the queen of the Holy Kingdom was torn to pieces and her country controlled. Rowan was not interested in Blood Emperor. The only one in the Empire that truly caught his attention was Flutter. If he had enough time, Rowan wouldn't mind slowly researching magic from scratch. However, with only a little over 4 years until Bone King's arrival, he could only absorb Flutter's foundational knowledge, and then advance magic upon that basis. Even so, it would still be extremely difficult for Rowan's magical attainments to reach Bone King's level in just over 4 years. The human potential in this world was too low, even 7th-tier magic was considered legendary. Fearing to leave any traces, Rowan did not enter through the main gate, but instead sneaked into the Empire's capital at night. The Empire's capital was extremely prosperous, appearing much more impressive than the royal capital of the kingdom. In fact, later on, if it weren't for the support of theocracy, Blood Emperor would have been able to annex the kingdom even before Bone King's arrival. In the Empire's capital, a large area was separately designated as the Imperial Magic Academy, where many ordinary people studied. This was an academy dedicated to cultivating magic users such as mystics, sorcerers, and mages, and its dean was Flutter. Blood Emperor indeed had a lot of vision. After wandering the streets for a while, he roughly located the Magic Academy. Rowan found an inn to stay in, then summoned a flock of crows to monitor the Magic Academy. Because he summoned many crows, this skill actually leveled up, and he could now summon 2nd-tier crows. There was no essential difference between 2nd-tier crows and 1st-tier crows, they simply had higher levels, faster speed, and stronger combat power. As reconnaissance units, these advantages actually had little impact. Over 30 black crows landed in various locations around the Magic Academy, just waiting for Flutter to appear. The primary observation point was Flutter's magic tower. However, due to the existence of the Eye of Foresight, the crows dared not approach too closely. Then, Rowan waited there for 3 days, and during this time, he still did not find any trace of Flutter. Rowan was getting a bit frantic. Where had this old man gone into hiding? Was he perhaps researching some magic? That was indeed a possibility. Flutter was obsessed with magic, having no other interests besides it. It was said that he had lived for over 200 years and was still a virgin, which was quite remarkable. Rowan felt a bit helpless. He summoned a few more crows to fly around the city, observing if the old man was elsewhere. However, he didn't find the old man, but he did discover an interesting fellow. It was a young woman wearing a black robe, with the right side of her face hidden by her hair. Renas Rockbrooks, a woman whose face was ruined on one side after being cursed during a monster extermination. Affected by the curse, one side of her face became terrifying and constantly oozed pus. However, this misfortune also led her to become a high-level professional, a cursed knight. If it were an ordinary person, they probably wouldn't mind. Exchanging one side of their face for a high-level profession would be a worthwhile trade. But for Renas, it was a disaster. Having become a monster, she was ostracized by her family. She came from a noble family, but because of this curse, her family disowned her, and her fiancé even came to break off the engagement. This person practically had the protagonist's template. To lift the curse, she was willing to do anything. In the story, a year or two later, with the help of Blood Emperor, she avenged herself against her family and her fiancé's family. In return, she joined the Four Knights. However, her loyalty was not high. She once publicly stated that if anyone could lift her curse, she would even attack Blood Emperor. Only the broad-minded Blood Emperor could tolerate her. Blood Emperor was truly a dominant ruler, well, if Bone King hadn't arrived. After Bone King arrived and visited the Empire, she disappeared. It was highly likely she joined the Great Tomb, because Bone King had a way to remove her curse. Of course, that was for later. Currently, the Empire's Four Knights were still the first generation. Only after the warrior captain of the kingdom killed two of them would Blood Emperor seek her out, and make a deal with her to become one of the new Four Knights. This person was one of the few humans in this world who had obtained a high-tier profession. A crow landed on a nearby eaves, watching the girl hiding in an alley corner. The other party also saw the crow, and the two stared at each other. After a long gaze, Renas took out a piece of bread and tore it into crumbs. "Are you hungry? Come eat." The crow did not fly over. After a moment of silence, it actually spoke human words. "You are Renas, huh, how interesting." Renas's expression changed, and she picked up a spear beside her, pointing it at the crow. "Who are you?" "I am merely a passerby, no need for such vigilance." "By the way, what are you hiding here for?" Renas's face turned terribly grim. How terrifying, with such a grim expression. Could it be that you're plotting how to take revenge on your family and your fiancé's family? "Heh heh, what a terrifying madwoman," the crow said in a mocking tone. Renas wished she could stab the fellow to death with her spear. "Shut up, you disgusting coward who dares not show his face. You sickening cockroach, if you have even a tiny bit of courage, even bigger than a mouse's, then stand before me in your true form." Rowan's eyebrow twitched. It seemed he wasn't very good at insults. He felt like he couldn't out-curse this madwoman. "Relax, as I said, I'm just a passerby. I've only occasionally heard about you, and meeting you was purely accidental. I just want to find Flutter and have a fight with him. After the fight, I'll give him some treatment," Rowan thought to himself. Renas had a look as if she had seen a ghost. "You want to fight Flutter? Do you know who Flutter is?" "Of course, the guardian of the Empire, an abnormal, a magic caster who alone can annihilate all of the Empire's armies. Since you know that, you still dare to challenge him. Flutter's strength, in this world, probably has no equal. Flutter's power was deeply ingrained in people's minds, even Blood Emperor grew up under his watch. In the Empire, he held a position of high esteem." Chapter 41 Flutter. Rowan's expression was a little strange. Haha, no opponent. The wisdom of mortals. If it were within the Empire, there might indeed be no opponent, but theocracy has people stronger than him. And outside human territory, there are countless monsters stronger than him. Humans are just a weak race confined to a corner of the continent. Renas stared at the crow and sneered, "So it's just a madman." The crow continued, "The reason I'm telling you all this is because you possess a certain possibility, the possibility of breaking through human limits. That's why I'm speaking to you at such length. And whether it's the revenge you're currently plotting, or the curse on your face, I have a way to deal with both. Renas stared intently at the crow. The crow didn't mind. Go to the kingdom's capital and display your worth. Those without worth aren't deserving of my attention. Well then, we'll meet again if there's an opportunity. No, you can't leave. Renas shouted loudly, but the crow didn't stop and flew away directly. Only Renas remained, her expression constantly shifting between dark and light. Was it a madman? A swindler? Or was such a possibility truly real? Renas's mind was in turmoil. She touched the cursed side of her face, her heart filled with nothing but resentment. On the other side, Rowan was still somewhat interested in Renas, especially her advanced class. If possible, he could use optimization to heal her and see if it might trigger a rare class. However, rare classes for melee professions were usually still melee, and Rowan primarily focused on magic professions. So, even if the Cursed Knight had a rare class, it would most likely be of no use to him. It was a casual move. In the following days, Renas frantically searched for the crow. Unfortunately, most were just ordinary crows. Even when she found a magical crow, it ignored Renas. Hard work pays off. After a few more days, Flutter finally appeared. He was indeed in the magic tower and hadn't left. After he gave a lecture, he returned inside. Good, it's good that he's in there. I was afraid he'd hide somewhere unknown. That night, Rowan flew towards the magic tower. Before that, he put on an Azura mask. After all, he was going to beat up an old man over 200 years old, so it was better not to be recognized. He was still holding on to two crows that carried him. While it didn't look very graceful, the effect was the same as flying. Second-tier crows were already quite strong. Two crows could easily carry a person, let alone an ox. They couldn't be viewed with ordinary biological thinking. Carrying a person was effortless and barely affected their speed. High in the sky, protected by the night, the people below didn't detect anything unusual. Rowan landed on the magic tower. There were protective spells on the magic tower, but their level wasn't very high. Rowan didn't master many spells, nor did he have a way to break them, so he would just use brute force to destroy them. With just one sword strike, he broke through the defense and then entered the magic tower through a window. At the same time, the alarm sounded. Rowan had a headache, feeling like a muggle. Even though his main profession was magic, he still had to rely on brute force. It was truly shameful. The magic tower was very large, with many rooms. This was Flutter's research area, and most of it was filled with research documents and materials. This old man was a true researcher. Besides the old man, only a few assistants would enter here, but after dark, only Flutter was here. The crow was still leading the way. Rowan went down floor after floor. Soon, he found the other party in a certain room. To be precise, the other party sensed Rowan's presence. The old man looked at Rowan, his expression becoming serious. Your strength is considerable. Can you use fourth-tier magic at such a young age? Truly remarkable. His insightful demonic, I could see the opponent's magic power, and discern the highest tier of magic they could use. He felt slightly relieved. He could use several fifth-tier spells, and with the full power of the nation, he could even use a sixth-tier spell. Although the opponent was strong, he couldn't threaten him. The insightful demonic eye was powerful, but unfortunately, it couldn't detect the existence of skills. Otherwise, he would have been scared and run away. Esteemed Flutter, I apologize for disturbing you late at night. I actually just wanted to spar with you in magic. I have no intention of destroying this place. Spar? Coming over late at night doesn't look like sparring. Not only did you rudely trespass into my magic tower, but you're also wearing a mask, hiding your face. Flutter stared at Rowan, but unfortunately, he couldn't discern anything. There's no other way. As an unknown junior like me, you wouldn't possibly meet with me, so I could only resort to this method. I am a magic caster from the kingdom, and I came here out of admiration for you." Flutter was silent. He scrutinized Rowan. When did such a master appear in the kingdom? Rowan was also observing the other party. Rowan knew that the other party possessed teleportation magic, and once he intended to teleport, Rowan would immediately strike to interrupt him. What an impudent fellow. "If I don't agree, are you planning to attack here?" Rowan said helplessly, "I don't want to either." "In that case, let's go. There's a training ground in the back." Flutter wasn't afraid of Rowan, but he was worried that too much commotion here would damage the equipment. Rowan honestly followed him. Because the alarm was triggered, many guards had already surrounded the magic tower. The one leading the knight squad was Nazak, one of the 4 knights. Seeing Flutter come out with a young man, he asked somewhat nervously, "Lord Flutter, this is—" "It's nothing. A friend who traveled a long way accidentally triggered the alarm." Nazak didn't know what to say. This person was wearing a mask and had suddenly trespassed. He didn't seem like a friend. Flutter led Rowan to the open ground behind them, ignoring Nazak. "Although I don't know what your purpose is, as the guardian of the Empire, this old man is not so easily defeated. 3rd tier magic, summon angel. Dominate undead. Fireball." The opponent quickly used several spells, and Rowan was not to be outdone. Lightning Lance. Silver Knight's Lance. The summoned angel hadn't even gotten close to Rowan before it was struck down by a Silver Knight's Lance. Since he had no other magic, the only thing he could use effectively right now was the Silver Knight's Lance. Again, Silver Knight's Lance. 3rd tier magic, Pierce Resistance Shield. A blue shield blocked the Knight's Lance. Heh, magic isn't necessarily better the higher its tier. Using targeted magic to counter an opponent's magic is the most suitable approach. For example, right now, your 4th tier magic, which consumes a large amount of magic power, has been blocked by my targeted 3rd tier magic. Your consumption is far higher than mine. Flutter explained from the side, while 10 greater ghouls had already crawled out beside him. Chapter 42, Forbidden Spell Weaver. The upper ghoul's level was not low, although not as strong as a Death Knight, its power was considerable. The 4 knights observing from the side could only handle 2 or 3 each, so with 10 ghouls attacking, he was sure to be defeated. Rowan sighed helplessly. "My magic is indeed just starting, and I only have these few spells I can use. However, I do have some experience with swordsmanship." Rowan pulled out a longsword. Sword. He lunged forward, entering their range. Azura Slash. A flash of sword energy, and the 10 upper ghouls were instantly annihilated. What is this?" Nazak, who was observing, broke into a cold sweat. "This guy's power. 6th tier, improved undead summoning. Necrotic aggregate giant." Flutter no longer dared to hold back. The moment he made his move, it was one of his 2 strongest spells. A 5-meter-tall undead giant appeared before Flutter, looking down at Rowan. The terrifying aura made the soldiers outside tremble. The necrotic aggregate giant, a formidable monster capable of destroying an entire army. After witnessing Rowan's strength, he no longer held back, unleashing his strongest magic. Actually, he couldn't normally cast a standard 6th tier spell. Currently, his only 2 6th tier spells required either a ritual, or were ones he had personally optimized. It looks very powerful, but its level is only 32. Ah, it's appeared. Flutter's undead summoning, the legendary undead giant that can wipe out an entire army. It's too terrifying. Nazak explained as if he were a narrator. Although a Death Knight is also 6th tier, a 6th tier summoning spell cannot summon a Death Knight, it requires 7th tier. This undead giant looked larger than a Death Knight, but its strength was actually inferior to a Death Knight. Azura Slash. A black light, from bottom to top, shot into the sky. The undead giant was split in 2 by this terrifying sword light before it could even react. A rare job exclusive skill, Azura Slash, usable only 3 times a day, deals incredibly explosive damage. While a Death Knight has the characteristic of retaining a single drop of blood upon death, making it impossible to instantly kill, this undead giant does not. Not good. Flutter gasped in alarm, wanting to chant and use teleportation to escape. However, Rowan had already appeared behind him like a ghost. Pfft. The longsword directly pierced through his stomach, blood splattering onto the ground in front. Ah, Lord Flutter. Cough cough. If you don't want him to die, then stay put, Rowan said indifferently. The guards nearby turned beet red but dared not make a move. It was unbelievable. The Empire's guardian deity, the strongest magic caster, Lord Flutter, who had reached a realm unattainable by humans and could destroy a nation alone, had actually been defeated, and so easily, by a young man. You cough cough. Rowan pulled out his longsword. Apologies, I misjudged. I am quite proficient in self-healing magic. I will heal you now. Optimization. Rowan murmured in his heart. The stored optimization energy dropped by over 30 points, and at the same time, Flutter's experiences began to flood into Rowan's mind. The memories were so vivid, as if Rowan was Flutter. The pain he experienced was completely fed back to Rowan. Rowan's face was pale, and he half knelt on the ground, cold sweat beading on his forehead. But he gritted his teeth, enduring the impact of Flutter's 200 years of memories. Damn it, over 200 years of memories are no joke. Ah, it hurts so much. Over 200 years of pain released all at once. Rowan discarded all unnecessary memories, yet even so, various magical knowledge surged like a tide. Flutter's injuries recovered at a visible rate. He touched his stomach, feeling only disbelief. This recovery magic was too powerful, 5th tier, no, 6th tier, or even higher tier in existence. Such powerful magic, why didn't my demon eye of insight perceive it? He looked at the young man, finding that he seemed to be enduring immense pain, clutching his head, rolling on the ground without any composure, forming a stark contrast to his earlier power. This recovery magic must have come at a great cost. Flutter thought to himself, understanding perfectly, because his other 6th-tier magic also required a huge price to be successfully cast. The guards observing from the side watched Rowan roll on the ground, exchanging glances. Should I attack him while he's in a bad state? A thought popped into Flutter's mind. No. I'll pass. Flutter shook his head, dismissing the thought. In fact, if he had attacked Rowan, he would have found himself unable to harm him. Rowan's Azura passive provided low-tier magic immunity, other attacks were reduced by 20%, and coupled with his highest magic defense, 4th-tier magic likely wouldn't even scratch him, and even 5th-tier magic would have a very weak effect. After a while, Rowan finally got up. Wearing his mask, no one could see his expression. Basic knowledge of the basic job mage has been learned, meeting the qualification standard. Job evolver triggered. The advanced jobs derived from the basic job mage are Forbidden Arts Master, High Tier Mage. Please choose one of these advanced jobs, or abandon this job. Basic knowledge of the advanced job Forbidden Arts Master has been learned, meeting the qualification standard. Job evolver triggered. The rare job derived from the advanced job Forbidden Arts Master is Forbidden Curse Weaver. Please choose one of these advanced jobs, or abandon this job. Basic knowledge of the basic job Priest has been learned, meeting the qualification standard. Job evolver triggered. The rare jobs derived from the advanced job Forbidden Arts Master are High Tier Priest, Priestess. Please choose one of these advanced jobs, or abandon this job. Basic knowledge of the advanced job Immortal has been learned, meeting the qualification standard. Job evolver triggered. The advanced job Immortal has no derived rare jobs. Please take this job, or abandon this job. Flutter had 4 jobs, 2 of which were basic jobs and completely worthless. The other 2 advanced jobs were unique to another world. Among them, the Immortal job allowed Flutter to live to over 200 years old. Rowan had originally been very much looking forward to the immortal job, it sounded very powerful. However, to his disappointment, this job surprisingly had no advanced job. Moreover, through the other party's memories, he learned that this job itself did not possess strong combat power, but it could greatly extend one's lifespan through certain means. It felt very different from the immortals imagined by Chinese people. For ordinary people, extending lifespan is indeed very impressive. If Rowan didn't have the Mother of Life job, he might have learned it. However, lifespan is no longer a limit for Rowan, so this immortal job is useless to him. Perhaps in the future, this job system could be researched, but for now, he would not consider taking this job. Given this, there was only one choice left. Chapter 43, Forbidden Eye. The advanced rare profession of Forbidden Arts Master, Forbidden Curse Weaver, has been chosen. Forbidden Curse Weaver, weave forbidden curses, break fate, you are the weaver of taboos, and the peeper of the abyss. The prerequisites for Forbidden Curse Weaver are, Forbidden Arts Master LV10, Fate Seeker LV10, invented or improved no fewer than 3 spells, already exempted. Passive skill obtained, Magic Perception. Passive skill obtained, Eye of Taboo. Active skill obtained, Forbidden Curse Weaving. Magic Perception, passive you perceive traces of magic, magical effects are hidden from your eyes. Eye of Taboo, active your eyes possess the ability to peer into taboos. When actively used, it can weaken the side effects of forbidden curses. You can choose to pay the cost of a forbidden curse with magic power. When activated, magic perception is greatly enhanced. Forbidden Curse Weaving, Tier 1 modify existing magic to create forbidden curses. This skill can be leveled up as forbidden curses are created. He successfully took on the profession, and his eyes felt a bit strange. How to put it, although his strength hadn't increased, he gained some special abilities. As for how effective these abilities were, Rowan wasn't sure yet. This profession seemed to be all about growth and support abilities. It seemed that, so far, he still didn't have a proper magic output profession. As for the skill tree, it looked impressive. Taboo Scrutiny, active peer into the origin, effect, core, and principle of a taboo object. Usage limit, 1x/3 days. Requires Forbidden Curse Weaver LV1. Abyssal Insight, active peer into the abyss, and comprehend the power of taboos. Limit, 1x/3 days. Requires Forbidden Curse Weaver LV3, overall level LV80. Forbidden Curse Enhancement, active elevates your next Forbidden Curse by 1 tier. 1x/7 days. Requires Forbidden Curse Weaver LV5. These 3 skills seemed somewhat profound and awe-inspiring, but none of them were commonly used abilities. Taboo Scrutiny, what exactly was a taboo object? Rowan had never heard of it. It also looked like a support ability. Abyssal Insight, this was the first skill Rowan encountered that required an overall level. He couldn't use it until he reached level 80, making it practically useless for now. Forbidden Curse Enhancement, this skill's upper and lower limits could only be described as terrifying. Using it on a Tier 1 Forbidden Curse to make it Tier 2 seemed rather pointless. But what if there was a super tier Forbidden Curse? What would happen then? Could it reach the level of origin magic or even surpass its effects? But no matter what, these skills currently seemed unusable. But it didn't matter, growth-type abilities were good, meaning a high upper limit. There was no pressure to survive at the moment, so he could bide his time. This time, the harvest was too great. Not only did he make up for a huge amount of basic magic knowledge, but he also gained such a powerful rare profession. Rowan got up from the ground and patted the dirt off himself. Seeing everyone looking at him, should he silence them? Forget it, forget it. He chanted a spell, preparing to teleport. He had learned many spells from Flutter, and teleportation magic was one of them. Flutter clearly recognized it. Wait, you're going to teleport? I'm not in a good state right now. If there's an opportunity in the future, let's discuss it then. All right. We will meet again, Flutter said with deep eyes. Low-level teleportation had this drawback: it was slow and easily interrupted. A moment later, Rowan disappeared from the spot. After Rowan left, Flutter ordered the news to be sealed. This strange fellow was like a mist. Although his magical attainment was not as good as his own, his combat power surpassed his. Was he a warrior who also chanted spells? Even so, how could he use a fourth-tier spell? How did he manage it? Flutter was filled with doubts. The healing method the other party used at the end also felt like a forbidden curse. He began to look forward to their next encounter. Teleporting directly out of the city, Rowan continued to let the two crows carry him. Low-level teleportation also had this disadvantage: short distance. It seemed to have nothing but flaws, but a single spatial movement could cover all its shortcomings. After leaving the Empire, Rowan encountered an ogre. Perfect, he could test his abilities. Eye of Taboo. Rowan activated his ability, and his originally black pupils underwent a strange change. Black cross patterns appeared in his eyes, as if peering into the abyss. After activating the ability, Rowan could see the magical traces on the ogre opposite him. All magical creatures had magical traces on them. The magic power flowing within its body, the residual enhancement on its body after using magic, the magical damage on its body after being hit. Wherever there is contact, there will be a trace. This ability allowed him to observe the direction and effect of an opponent's magic use in combat. In normal times, he could also observe whether his allies were controlled, and during practice, he could assist himself in mastering magic through observation. It was a very practical skill. Very good and also very cool. He casually killed the ogre. Support abilities were so useful, much better than pure destructive skills. In the future, his speed in learning magic could be even faster. And this forbidden curse weaving skill, which seemed to be used for creating forbidden curses, although it had no direct destructive power, its attached effects were very strong. The future was promising. Rowan didn't go back directly. He was still thinking about the lizard men in the Great Wetlands. Everything else was fine, but he definitely had to find out what was going on with that frozen Fong pain. While being carried by the crows, Rowan organized the knowledge he had acquired from Flutter in his mind. Flutter had lived for over 200 years and had learned a great many spells, though most were only superficial, with only a few having been deeply researched. His two most powerful spells had both reached the 6th tier. One was an immortal's ritual magic that could grant people longer lifespans. Rowan lacked the immortal profession and couldn't use it, but the ritual itself was highly valuable for reference. Unfortunately, the conditions for its setup were too stringent. It was no exaggeration to say it required the resources of an entire nation, making it not very practical. The other was his improved 6th-tier spell, Undead Summoning. This originally necromancy-type spell could now be used by forbidden arts masters. Rowan could naturally also use this spell, but without the passive support of the necromancy system, the spell's power was somewhat lacking, and it wasn't as strong when used as it would be by a necromancy profession. In addition, there was the 5th-tier teleportation spell, as well as various 3rd and 4th-tier spells of all types, but truly powerful destructive spells were not that many. But it didn't matter. Rowan didn't expect to rely on these spells for combat. For him, foundational knowledge was more important. And the Forbidden Curse Weaver profession could use the professional skill, Forbidden Curse Weaving, to design and create forbidden curses. Among them, the higher the skill level of Forbidden Curse Weaving, the higher the upper limit of the forbidden curses that could be woven. Creating magic also required a very high level of foundational knowledge of magic. Chapter 44 Lizardmen. So-called forbidden curses are, in essence, also magic. It's just that, compared to ordinary magic, they possess 5 superior attributes: higher destructive power, greater depth, more weird, eerie/unconventional, a heavier burden, and more complex casting conditions. Forbidden curses are extremely powerful, but if one isn't of a related class, regular spellcasters cannot use them, or they can only be used by paying a huge price. For example, needing to sacrifice a part of one's body, extracting one's soul, or lifespan as a cost. Their advantages are also obvious. Once used, they either possess astonishing destructive power or astonishing effects, adhering to the principle of high cost, high output. Fifth-tier magic was a bit too high for Rowan. He decided to start with a second-tier magic to get some practice. After sifting through options, Rowan chose the Lightning Lance spell. Rowan, as a forbidden curse weaver, is less a user of forbidden curses and more a creator of them. Although he is intimately connected with forbidden curses, his own skill system doesn't contain a single forbidden curse. A forbidden curse has 5 characteristics. The first is high destructive power. The destructive power of the lightning element lies in its instantaneous energy output. Rowan took out his notebook and began designing the magic based on relevant knowledge. The second is high depth, meaning the need to leverage deeper forces of the world. Rowan, possessing the 5th-tier lightning magic, Dragon Lightning, could think from a higher perspective, making it easier to find breakthroughs. The third is being more unconventional. Its true meaning is to activate the special effects of the magic. This effect can either manifest in the magic's destructive power, or its efficacy, or even its burden, allowing the magic to perform far beyond its inherent tier. Rowan naturally hoped to enhance the destructive power of the lightning lance. The fourth is a greater burden. Higher destructive power naturally requires more energy support. Since it's a second-tier magic, Rowan naturally had to consider it from the perspective of a second-tier user, or even allow a first-tier user to use it at a cost. Otherwise, if the designed forbidden curse required a third-tier user, it would be no different from high-tier magic, and wouldn't be considered a forbidden curse at all. The fifth is more complex casting conditions. Its meaning is to transfer the burden originally placed on the user to other things, allowing the user to cast this magic, which exceeds their limits, after paying a price. Common methods include rituals, props, magic potions, etc. Unconventional methods involve one's own flesh and blood, lifespan, vitality, and similar things. He established the framework, refined the details, and used the forbidden curse weaving skill to deduce and test the possibilities within. If paired with the Eye of Destiny, it would be easier to predict the effects of the forbidden curse, allowing him to adjust the current content based on the predicted results. This was not a simple task. It was truly hair-raising. A day later, the crow carried Rowan to the Great Swamp. Many creatures are active in the Great Swamp, the most famous of which are the lizard men. This race joined the Great Tomb not long after the Bone King's arrival. Besides the lizard men, there are also frogmen, twin witches, and others. There was no mention of the twin witches in the storyline. It is said that they once fought against the lizard men tribes and seized one of the 4 holy relics. He didn't know if he would encounter them, but Rowan wasn't holding out much hope anyway. Not long after entering the swamp, Rowan encountered some lizard men out hunting. Upon seeing humans, they didn't ask any questions and immediately launched an attack. The relationship between demi-humans and humans is mostly poor, and mutual attacks upon meeting are commonplace. An arrow struck Rowan's forehead, emitting a crisp ding sound. These guys, mostly below level 10, certainly have a lot of guts. Rowan was here to rob, so there was no need for idle chatter. Second-tier magic, Lightning Lance. A giant lightning lance pierced through one of the lizard men. No good, it's a spellcaster. Everyone, attack separately. A lizardman shouted loudly. Heh, useless struggle. Fireball. Negative energy arrow. Wind blade. Ice arrow. One low-tier spell after another was unleashed. Excellent, excellent, this is what it feels like to be a mage, elegant, so elegant. No need to move around at all, he could eliminate enemies while sitting, and in the midst of conversation, enemies would turn to dust. This was the feeling. The enemies quickly died at Rowan's hands. The last captain tried to escape, but Rowan used soul stripping to extract his soul, then, after some modification, stuffed it back in. The modified lizardman Erwuzi knelt respectfully before Rowan, awaiting his commands. The lizardman Erwuzi had wholeheartedly submitted to Rowan. If Rowan gave the order, he would not hesitate to harm even his closest kin. To some extent, the soul-stripping skill was quite evil. With over 4 years remaining until the start of the main storyline, Rowan didn't know where the frozen Fong pain was. After a detailed explanation from the lizardman Erwuzi, Rowan gained a general understanding of the situation here. Although the wetland wasn't very large, there were several lizardmen tribes within it. Among them, the frozen Fong pain was currently in the hands of the leader of the Sharp Fong tribe. As for the 4 holy relics, besides the lost one, 2 others were in the hands of different tribes, the armor of bones and the wine barrel. Since he was already here, he might as well take a look at all of them. The first target was the Sharp Fong tribe, with the lizardman Erwuzi leading the way. There was no need for any preparations, they simply intruded into the Sharp Fong tribe's territory. As the 2 of them intruded, the Sharp Fong tribe's alarms blared, and soon, the chieftain emerged with sturdy tribal warriors to meet the enemy. "Who are you? What do you want in our Sharp Fong tribe?" Rowan's attention was focused on the frozen Fong pain in the opponent's hand. This weapon resembled a long, irregularly shaped ice block. Its appearance was rather ordinary, and its length was quite short, only qualifying it as a short dagger. As for its appearance, he liked its color, but its shape was too ugly. Rowan was, after all, a grand blacksmith. Although he couldn't use his appraisal skill without touching the opponent's weapon, he could still roughly estimate it. This was at least a superior material, but it had only undergone the simplest processing, essentially still in its raw state. Excellent, it hasn't been wasted yet. If he could get his hands on it, optimization it, then collect high-grade auxiliary materials, and after forging, incorporate rune script or magic, Rowan couldn't even imagine how strong it would be. Even if its strength was average, the experience it provided would definitely not be small. He absolutely had to get his hands on this thing. Rowan said coldly, "I'm here for the frozen Fong pain. That's not something the weak can possess." "Damn human, how dare you speak so arrogantly in front of the great leader of the Sharp Fong tribe, Sharp Fong Cuckoo. I'll cut off your head." Yeah. Interesting. Everyone, don't hold back against these damned invaders, get them. Woo. Chapter 45, Breaking Through the Boundary. Facing the group of lizard men charging at him, Rowan didn't waste words, throwing out one spell after another. Enemies hit were instantly killed. It was a pity he didn't have any large-scale spells yet, otherwise, eliminating a large area with a single spell would be even easier. "Damn it, it's a high-level spellcaster," the chieftain roared, charging towards Rowan. Fireball. A giant fireball materialized out of thin air, then smashed fiercely towards him. Ice burst. The opponent roared, swinging his weapon with full force, and massive ice blades continuously formed, thrusting towards Rowan's direction, causing the fireball to explode upon impact with the ice blades. This move was quite impressive. Unfortunately, in the face of absolute power, such skills were useless. Fifth Tier Magic, Silver Knight's Lance. A gigantic white knight's lance materialized out of thin air. He had originally intended to pierce the chieftain, but then worried he might use his weapon to block, damaging the lance. As a result, he twisted its trajectory, throwing it at a lizardman warrior next to him. The lizardman warrior next to him. The massive knight's lance directly impaled the opponent, killing him beyond any doubt. He switched to another spell. Wind Blade. An extremely fast wind blade shot across the air at incredible speed. The chieftain couldn't react at all, and the wind blade directly severed his head, causing blood to gush out. This spell was fine, even if the opponent blocked with a weapon, it wouldn't damage the weapon. The Silver Knight's lance, however, was a bit too powerful. The other lizardmen warriors were filled with shock and anger, they wanted to flee, but Rowan picked them off one by one with spells. The people in the tribe seemed to notice that the battle was going poorly, and pulled up the tribe's gate, ignoring the fate of the other lizardmen warriors. Rowan didn't care about this, his only target was frozen Fong pain. Lizardmen were, after all, intelligent creatures, not monsters, so Rowan wouldn't wipe out their entire tribe. The strong ones were basically all in front of him, and the weaker ones wouldn't provide much experience. The lizardman Erwuzi respectfully went to pick up frozen Fong Pain, and knelt to offer it to Rowan. Rowan took it and appraised it. Yes, it was indeed a superior material. In this world, superior materials were already considered incredible treasures. After putting it away, Rowan headed to his next target. The wine barrel had no value, but the white dragon armor was worth checking out. He arrived at the next tribe, following the same process, stating his purpose, the other party refusing to hand over the item, fighting, and then a total wipeout. However, to Rowan's disappointment, the value of this white dragon armor was nowhere near that of frozen Fong Pain. The white dragon armor was actually made from the bones of a large lizard that had reached the hero tier in its lifetime. After being modified, the bones offered decent defense. But to Rowan, this was trash. Casually tossing it to the ground, Rowan returned in disappointment. As for the lizardman Erwuzi, Rowan had arranged for him to infiltrate the lizardmen tribes to gather intelligence for him. Sorry, it was really inconvenient to have the lizardman with him. If he had a base in the future, he could take him in. After staying in the lizardmen territory for less than a day, Rowan's justice value dropped by 10 points. Wantonly killing intelligent creatures was indeed not just. However, the impact wasn't too significant. When no one was around, Rowan used optimization to upgrade his items by 1 level, then absorbed a few high-level monsters to recover some energy before heading back to the royal capital. Upon returning to the royal capital, the city had undergone some peculiar changes. If the original royal capital had hidden corruption and sin beneath its prosperity, then the current royal capital had a deeper layer of terror hidden beneath its calm surface, but the sin had greatly diminished. At least, the number of slaves had greatly reduced. However, it was not completely eradicated. Although Eight Fingers no longer engaged in this trade, some still secretly did, but those who did would be severely exploited by Eight Fingers, and the profits were not as high as imagined. Returning home, Rowan found Alka already waiting for him at the door. During this time, Alka had been establishing his influence in the royal capital, and had already achieved some success. Rowan had not even entered the city, when he had already received intelligence. "Master, welcome back." Rowan glanced at him, his brows slightly furrowed. "Your strength, why hasn't it increased? Have you been diligently practicing recently?" It had been over a month since this guy was created, maybe even 2 months, so why was he still at level 50? Alka looked ashamed. "I am very sorry, Master, for disappointing you. Never mind, let's go inside first." Back in the house, after confirming there was no surveillance around, Rowan placed his hand on Alka's head. Alka thought he was about to be punished, and wore a resigned expression. Limit break. Rowan's stored optimization energy began to drop at a terrifying speed, directly decreasing by 200 points. He had stored a lot of energy, but 2/3 of it was gone. Alka felt a surge of scorching power pour into his body. His face flushed red, and although he couldn't see his attributes, he could feel his strength increasing significantly. This is me enhancing your strength through certain means. The cost is considerable, so you must not tell anyone about this." The consumption was not small, but the effect was also very obvious. Alka's strength had increased by 1 level. "Yes, Master, All right, just remember to do your job well from now on. I have a few things to tell you." Rowan's face showed a hint of fatigue. The thought of how much energy he would need to drain to fully replenish it later made him feel very tired. Next, Rowan first listened to Alka's recent work. Alka's ability was still very strong, and he worked meticulously. After integrating 8 Fingers, he removed most of the useless parts, purifying and strengthening 8 Fingers. The originally bloated 8 Fingers was significantly streamlined, and its combat power and intelligence-gathering capabilities were greatly enhanced. During this period, he collected many alchemy and forging materials, as well as a good number of magic-related books and materials. However, in terms of magic-related collection, it was still far inferior to the vast organization of the Mages Guild. Rowan had no complaints. He instructed Alka about relevant information regarding the Empire, as well as matters concerning Renas and Flutter. After giving him his subsequent arrangements, he let him attend to his own affairs. During this time, Rowan needed to properly digest the gains from this period. All unimportant matters were left to Alka to handle. Even so, Rowan still felt that time was insufficient. If only he had a clone jutsu. Wait, I remember there's also a ninja class here, seemingly a member of the kingdom's adamantite team. However, it was still several years before the plot began, and he had no idea where those guys were right now. He needed to keep an eye out. If he had a clone jutsu, his efficiency in doing things would greatly improve in the future. However, this was only Rowan's conjecture. Rowan wasn't sure if a clone jutsu could help him do things like in Naruto. Chapter 46 Princess Lana. Rowan returned to his room to continue his research on forbidden magic. He had recently become obsessed with forbidden magic, feeling as if he were solving a complex math problem. Alka first went to the warehouse to deliver the materials collected during this period to the two shops. At the shop, Alka encountered Kanina, who had been looking somewhat downcast recently. Alka, has Lord Rowan returned? Alka's face was expressionless. Why do you say that? Because you delivered the materials yourself. You would only do that if Lord Rowan had returned. Heh, you guessed correctly. With that, Alka went about his business. Kanina's face flushed red then paled. She felt as though she was growing further and further apart from Rowan. Lord Rowan had returned, and she hadn't even known. Why was this happening? I was here first, yet now Lord Rowan entrusts everything to Alka. Is it because my strength is too weak? Although she had been working desperately hard, her improvement speed was very limited. There was nothing she could do to improve faster. In fact, compared to before, her progress speed was already incredibly fast. After becoming half an undead, her potential had increased significantly. No, I must go see Lord Rowan. However, I'm not the most pitiful one. This person is. Although she's Lord Rowan's nominal alchemy apprentice, I'm practically the one teaching her everything. Kanina glanced at the ponytailed girl, who was currently promoting alchemy tools to a customer. Poor girl, Alka had avoided her entirely during their interactions, so she knew nothing. After a brief instruction, Kanina, with a nervous heart, arrived in front of Rowan's residence. She knocked on the door, and after receiving permission, she cautiously entered and headed upstairs. In the study upstairs, Rowan was flipping through a pile of magic books, writing something in his hand. Rowan glanced at her. Not bad. Her level had increased by 1. She hadn't been slacking off during this time. Lord Rowan, I. Rowan looked at her with a puzzled expression. Kanina then mustered her courage and said, I also want to do something for you, like Alka. I see. I'm pleased you have this thought. I do have some things I need you to do, but your current strength is too weak to help me. So for now, you just need to focus on diligently improving your strength. Is that so? So Lord Rowan values me greatly. It's true, Lord Rowan paid a huge price to pull me back from the brink of death, so he wouldn't just abandon me like that. I understand, I will work hard. But I feel my strength is improving too slowly. Rowan looked at her suspiciously. Good heavens, did Alka tell her what just happened? Unlikely. He had already instructed him not to tell anyone. Given Alka's loyalty, he wouldn't leak it even if it meant his death. Improving strength is a step-by-step process. To improve quickly, you must pay a price. A price. After the previous events, your talent has increased significantly. If you proceed systematically, you will eventually reach hero rank, or even the realm of an anomaly. There's no need to resort to unconventional methods. Alka was Rowan's sole clone, and their connection was extremely close. Canina, however, was not. Breaking through the limits was a serious matter, and Rowan couldn't possibly use it on someone he wasn't as closely connected to before. She had a certain degree of self-preservation. Once exposed, she would most likely be imprisoned by the world's strongest dragon lords until all her secrets were extracted. The dragon lords, the strongest in this world, were also among Rowan's enemies. I understand. Canina was a little disappointed. She just wanted to get stronger as quickly as possible. She had originally thought she was part of the team, and could always follow Rowan, but it turned out that wasn't the case at all. Although they were on the same team, they had never completed a mission together. After watching Canina leave, Rowan's attention returned to the deduction of the forbidden spell. He had mostly figured out this magic, all that remained was to optimization and perfect it. Speaking of which, there was still someone in the royal capital he was quite interested in. Before he didn't have a good way to approach her, but now it was different. Summoning a two-tiered crow, Rowan's consciousness connected to the crow. The crow flapped its wings and flew towards the royal castle. The king of the kingdom was an elderly man, though not as decrepit as he would be 5 years later. The king had 3 children. The eldest prince advocated violence and was dim-witted. When leading an army to fight the empire, he passed through Carne village, and was utterly defeated by a group of goblins summoned by Anri. The second prince was intelligent. After the eldest prince's death, he took over the kingdom. Unfortunately, he faced an opponent like the Great Tomb, which possessed absolute power, and was simply crushed. The youngest was the princess, who possessed extremely high intelligence, and was a mental anomaly. She betrayed the kingdom by siding with the Bone King, and was also known as the Princess of the Fallen Kingdom. Later, she joined the Great Tomb, and was transformed into a succubus. The crow flew over numerous common residences, over noble mansions, and past the high walls of the castle. After some eavesdropping and observation, it confirmed the direction of the princess's location. Princess Lana was reading in her study. Her posture was impeccable, strictly adhering to noble etiquette. Her golden hair looked very beautiful, and her expression was serious, though she looked a little unenergetic. Lana had 2 maids serving her behind her. Princess Lana was only just over 10 years old now, and it was unknown if she had met her loyal dog, Climb. During the reconnaissance, Climb hadn't been seen. According to the plot, the princess met Climb on a rainy night, when he was close to starving, then adopted him, harboring a strange possessiveness towards him. Finally, after transforming into a succubus, she even turned Climb into a demon. The princess was mentally twisted, while Climb was a good person, though his talent was rather ordinary. The crow landed nearby, quietly observing. To be honest, Rowan was actually hesitating whether to contact Lana. This person was truly peculiar, extremely intelligent, with a twisted mind. 80% of the plan to destroy the nation was devised by her. In the end, she even personally killed her own father, and then joined the Bone King's faction. Rowan worried that if he kept such a person by his side, she might betray him directly upon encountering the Bone King. However, Rowan also needed her resources. Some of his future plans required her assistance. Rowan needed a high-ranking member of the kingdom to do some things for him. Rowan decided to observe for a while. After all, there was still time. If she truly wasn't suitable, the second prince was also a good option. He was a smart person. Upon learning that someone possessed the power to destroy the entire kingdom, he would choose cooperation rather than confrontation. Chapter 47 Teachings. Rowan observed in secret for half the day. In the evening, the maid invited the princess to dine, but she refused. Rowan eavesdropped on their conversation and realized that the princess had been suffering from anorexia. Her complexion certainly looked poor. After they talked for a while longer, the 2 maids reluctantly departed. Lana continued reading. After a few minutes, she looked up at the crow. "Mr. Crow, there are no outsiders now. You may come in." Was he discovered? Of course, Lana possessed abnormal levels of observation skills. The crow flew into the room, landed on the table, and tilted its head to observe Lana up close. The Golden Princess certainly looked beautiful now, though Rowan felt she would look even better after her fall from grace. It was just a pity that her inner self was a little too perverse. "Mr. Crow, can you speak?" Of course, the crow replied. "How did you realize something was amiss with me?" "An ordinary crow wouldn't stand there for half a day without leaving," Lana said with a smile, yet there was no trace of amusement in her eyes. They were like a passage to the abyss, chilling the heart of anyone who looked into them. It was a pity that no matter how high her intelligence or how perverse her mind, they were meaningless before absolute power. Rowan was already prepared. If she was unsuitable to join his side, he would take action to imprison her before the Bone King arrived, making her disappear from the kingdom. At the very least, he could not allow her to obstruct him. "Not bad. You are young, but your observation is meticulous." "That's just common sense." "Mr. Crow, why are you looking for me?" "I doubt you're just hungry and want me to get you something to eat, right?" "No, I'm not. I merely heard of the princess's reputation and came to see for myself." "Oh? It's nothing serious, let's just chat. If you were to gain magical power that surpassed human limits, what would you do?" "Magical power that surpasses human limits? That. I wouldn't be able to achieve that, would I? If I truly had such power, I hope I could use it to properly help everyone, eliminate the monsters threatening the people in the kingdom, and become a great magic caster like Flutter." Rowan looked at the serious expression on Lana's face, and was momentarily speechless. "You are really good at acting. I am merely a crow, and I have nothing to do with the kingdom. I don't even belong to the kingdom, so you don't need to hide yourself. If you possessed such power, you would turn around and destroy the kingdom, shattering this cage that confines you, wouldn't you?" Lana looked surprised. "Mr. Crow, how could you think that? I am the princess of the kingdom. My royal father has done so much for me, and has never mistreated me. How could I possibly?" The crow sighed and groomed its feathers with its beak. "I told you, there's no need to hide. Your terrifying inner self is completely exposed in my eyes. It is precisely because no one understands you that you suffer from anorexia, isn't it? This world is so dull, like a human living among a troop of monkeys, not even knowing the meaning of continuing to live." The smile on Lana's face gradually vanished. Her face fell, and the strangeness in her eyes was no longer concealed. A terrifying inner self. How amusing, ha ha. To be honest, if Rowan hadn't known the plot, he definitely would have been fooled by her facade just now. Lana said, "Yes, it is too dull. But I am imprisoned within this boring cage. If I had the ability, I would shatter all of this, ha. What about your father? Would you strike at him too? If he stands in my way, ha, I will not hold back." Rowan felt a headache coming on. She was corrupted at such a young age. Was there truly such a thing as a naturally evil seed? "What about you, Mr. Crow? Are you truly a crow, or some terrifying entity hidden within a crow?" Just treat me as a crow. You are very interesting. Would you like to learn magic from me?" "Magic? Can I do that?" "I don't know if you can or not. Just consider it me casually scattering a seed." A casually scattered seed. Then, Mr. Crow, what do you want me to do?" "Destroy this nation." The crow shook its head. "I have no interest in destroying this nation. Don't let my appearance fool you, I'm actually a good person, barely. I told you, this is just a whim. Perhaps I will regret my actions today later on. If I can achieve that level, then that would be wonderful. At least it would prove that your judgment is sound, wouldn't it?" Perhaps. Lana possessed the genius job class, and was extremely intelligent. If she pursued the path of magic, her future could certainly be anticipated. Of course, the prerequisite was that Rowan could keep her under control. I am willing to learn magic from you, Teacher Crow. But what about the maids? Don't worry. I will alert you if anyone approaches. When others are present, I will just be an ordinary crow, and you don't need to worry about eavesdroppers. No one can hide from my eyes. A strange red light emanated from the crow's eyes. That is truly wonderful. Having absorbed a vast amount of magical knowledge, coupled with the magic books acquired from 8 Fingers, Rowan's knowledge reserves were already quite sufficient. He decided to impart knowledge related to magic caster and illusionist to Lana. Since Lana possessed the genius job class, it did not matter how many basic job classes she took. Although Lana was a genius, no matter how hard she tried, her growth speed could not compare to his. If she managed to reach level 100 on her own in less than 5 years, Rowan would have nothing left to say. Someone who could achieve that level would not be a genius, but a god. Furthermore, Rowan held a certain expectation for Lana. As a genius, she might be able to master an advanced job class of the illusionist profession. If so, he too could master rare job classes from the illusionist lineage. There were simply too few natives in this world who mastered advanced job classes. The old king had been in a good mood these past few days because his youngest daughter was no longer anorexic. She ate heartily every day and seemed much more energetic. She was just reading more and more, making the old king slightly worried that his little daughter would turn into a bookworm. Compared to his youngest daughter, his eldest son was much more troublesome. Although he was growing older, his maturity had not kept pace with his age. This gave the old king quite a headache. As for his second son, although he was quite intelligent and decent in social interactions, his appearance was not very good. His favorite was still his youngest daughter, who was excellent in all respects. As for Rowan, seeing Lana recover these past few days gave him mixed feelings. In the original plot, Lana met Climb on a rainy day, and his appearance allowed her to regain her vitality. But now, the plot had changed somewhat, and he didn't know if it was for the better or worse. He wondered if Climb would still appear. Could Lana still turn into that little devil without Climb? The future had become uncertain. These days, Rowan only occasionally focused his consciousness on Lana. Most of the time, he was elsewhere, mainly forging weapons. Lana was a genius and did not require much time for instruction. When Rowan's consciousness left, the crow reverted to an ordinary, dull monster, showing no abnormalities. Given Lana's intelligence, she likely figured this out as well. Chapter 48, Dwarf Kingdom. After resting in the royal capital for a few days, forging dozens of weapons, and using up his accumulated materials, Rowan set off again. Just as he said, Lana was merely a pawn. If she didn't become an asset later but instead a threat, Rowan would restrict her. Lana, you are too dangerous, he grabbed her with a big hand. Rowan's destination for this trip was the Dwarf Kingdom. Rowan's plan was to stay in the Dwarf Kingdom for a long time to study rune script there. The origin of rune script is unknown. It is a special method that can be applied to equipment, somewhat similar to magic infusion, and can enhance equipment. According to Rowan's estimation, if one mastered advanced techniques of rune script, it might be possible to raise an equipment's tier by 1 level. The frozen Fong Pain is of a relatively high grade. Directly forging it might only yield a holy relic grade equipment, wasting its potential. If he could acquire other high-grade materials in the Dwarf Kingdom, and then use rune script, along with his own forbidden spell enchantments, he might be able to forge a high-grade weapon. The dwarf clan only cares about 2 things, alcohol and forging. Their forging skill is extremely high, and even though they are in decline now, the heritage left behind is enough for Rowan to study for a long time. Rowan bought a large quantity of fine wine in the royal capital, and then embarked on his journey to find the Dwarf Kingdom. The Dwarf Kingdom is located in the mountain ranges to the right of the kingdom, bordering the Tobu Great Forest. Rowan first went to the Tobu Great Forest and spent several days slaughtering monsters until his optimization energy was almost full, then he headed for the mountains. The mountain range stretches endlessly, no smaller than the Tobu Great Forest, and is home to various monsters, with the dwarves being just one ordinary clan among them. A long time ago, the dwarves established a powerful and prosperous nation here, but after the demon god's descent 200 years ago, cities were destroyed one after another, their national strength declined, and only one member of the royal family remained. This royal member took all national treasures and left, joining the 13 heroes, never to return. Afterward, the remaining dwarves selected 8 members to lead the nation, and this system has been passed down to this day. The former glory is gone. The current dwarf kingdom has fewer than 100,000 people. After the Bone King arrived, he also came here, and by helping the dwarves reclaim their capital and defeat the digging orcs, subjugated the dwarf clan, and had them research rune script for him. However, at this point in time, the dwarf kingdom's capital should not yet have fallen. Rowan had no intention of subjugating the dwarves, but he absolutely had to learn rune script. It would be even better if he could cause some trouble for the Bone King later on. Relying on a group of created crows, Rowan not only found the royal capital but also located the digging orcs, and even the tracks of a frost dragon. As for the frost dragon, he would have to trouble them later, but for now, improving his forging skill was more important. Using the crow's abilities, Rowan directly bypassed the Great Canyon and the fortress, heading straight for the dwarf royal capital. Rowan arrived at the gates of the dwarf kingdom's capital, where he was stopped by dwarf soldiers. "Stop, humans are not welcome here," a dwarf soldier said, holding a spear and looking up at Rowan. Rowan smiled. "I am Rowan, a master forger from the human kingdom. This is my work." He pulled out a superior longsword and tossed it to the guard soldier. When traveling, one's reputation is self-made. Giving himself an impressive title would make people look up to him. Every dwarf is a heavy drinker, and every dwarf knows a bit about forging. Even the gate guards understood some forging knowledge. After several dwarves examined Rowan's weapon, they all looked shocked, muttering to each other in low voices. Dwarves on the roadside also came over curiously to watch. Rowan said, "I heard that dwarves are the most skilled blacksmiths, so I came here to exchange forging techniques." The gate guard laughed heartily. "Then you've come to the right place. Dwarves are the most skilled forgers. Your forged weapon is excellent, but it's still a bit inferior to our masters. Wait, I'll go call our leader." Rowan waited for a while, and then a dwarf with dark red hair arrived with a group of dwarf soldiers. The red-haired dwarf grumbled, "Are you that human? Leave, the dwarf kingdom does not welcome humans." A show of force right from the start. This dwarf, level 25, adamantite rank strength, not bad. Have the dwarves fallen to such an extent now? What did you say? The dwarves all drew their weapons. Arrogant, stuck in your ways, short-sighted, truly disappointing. It would have been better if the dwarves had perished 200 years ago. That way, at least they would have left behind a song of praise for the world, instead of being like this now, like mice hiding in a cave, not even daring to step out. No, mice still go out to forage. Clang, 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 a pile of dwarves drawing their weapons. "You damn fellow, ah ah ah." The red-haired dwarf pulled out his axe and attacked Rowan with a leaping slash. With just one kick from Rowan, that dwarf flew back even faster. The other dwarves also rushed towards Rowan, but they were all sent back one by one with a single kick from Rowan. Too slow, their movements were like slow motion in Rowan's eyes. At this stage, only a deviant could exchange a few blows with Rowan. Anyone below a deviant would be instantly defeated. And according to his memory, the dwarf kingdom didn't seem to have any existences of the deviant rank, not even heroes necessarily. In an instant, the dwarves were all lying on the ground. The red-haired dwarf propped himself up, panting heavily. "Who exactly are you?" "Rowan, a human master forger." "Cough, I also possess a bit of strength myself." "You. What is your objective?" "To exchange forging experience with the dwarves and learn rune script. However, I doubt whether the current dwarves still have the qualifications for that," Rowan said, looking down at the dwarves. The red-haired dwarf's face was flushed, as red as his hair. "Dwarves will never suffer insult." He jumped up. "Martial skill, super heavy leaping slash. He jumped high, then was kicked back again, this time even further. He looked just like a squat winter melon, very undignified. Enough, everyone stop. Several more dwarves rushed out of the city, their expressions complex as they scrutinized Rowan. If you truly wish to exchange forging techniques, then come. However, if you harbor other intentions, our dwarf clan is not to be trifled with. Chief Administrator, you. The red-haired dwarf yelled in anger. Rowan didn't mind. He followed these dwarves into the royal city, naturally being stared at by the dwarves along the way. Your Excellency's strength is formidable, few in the dwarf kingdom possess strength of your caliber, the chief administrator said with a gentle expression, not looking like a hot-tempered dwarf. Chapter 49, Show off a little. The chief administrator also felt quite helpless, because the strength of the person before him far exceeded their imagination. He could see that the dwarf kingdom's strongest commander-in-chief was no match for him, the gap was too wide. If he were to unleash his full power, the dwarf clan would suffer heavy casualties. Rowan said, "It's all right, my strength is just so. What I'm most proud of is my forging technique. There's no need for such formalities, just take me to see your forging techniques directly." Rowan put away the weapon he had just thrown out. This, all right. Without any detours, they led Rowan to the dwarf forging workshop. The forging workshop could be said to be the largest place in the dwarf city. The second largest place was the brewery. Inside the workshop, many dwarfs were hammering away with great enthusiasm, and a wave of heat washed over them. The forging workshop master ran out, covered in sweat. Chief Administrator, who is this? Rowan had an impression of this guy. In the story, after the Bone King subjugated the dwarfs, he casually gave them a piece of forging material. But even that material, which the Bone King looked down upon, was an incomparably precious treasure to the people of this world. Then this guy took the material and ran off. He was the most skilled blacksmith in the dwarf kingdom, but his stats were just mediocre. OD. Level, 17. Profession, Dwarf Warrior, LV3, Weaponsmith, LV8, Armorsmith, LV3, Runesmith, LV1, Toolsmith, LV2. Innate ability, none. With these stats, although he had many professions, none were high level, and his rune level wasn't high either, indicating he wasn't proficient in rune script. It made sense, because due to the influence of magic infusion technology, rune script had become an obsolete technique. This is a forging master from the human race, the chief administrator introduced. Forging master. OD scrutinized Rowan. There were very few humans here, and he had never seen a human forging master. Rowan smiled and said, "Prepare a furnace for me, and good metal materials. I'll forge a weapon. Can you do it?" "Don't waste our materials," the forging workshop master said angrily. "Prepare it for him, Master Rowan's strength is not weak," the chief administrator said. He didn't know how good his forging level was, but if this guy got upset and threw a tantrum, the dwarfs would suffer. Humph. The forging workshop master was a bit angry. He called his subordinates and had them bring some materials to Rowan. Rowan looked at them. They were good, intermediate-level materials, already considered very good. Although the dwarf kingdom had always been mining and forging, smelting intermediate-level materials was still very difficult. Very good, no tricks were played. Although dwarfs had fiery tempers, their personalities were relatively simple and earnest, so they wouldn't resort to petty schemes. Even though this guy later took things and ran away. He lit the fire and heated the iron. Rowan picked up the largest hammer and directly used the heart forging method. Clang! Clang! Once he began forging, Rowan's body and mind became immersed in it. At first the dwarfs showed disdain. "Ha, a human blacksmith. Even if you're a master among humans, compared to dwarfs, you're just mediocre, because dwarf forging technology is the best in the world." However, as the heart forging method deepened, the surroundings seemed to enter a new world. The hammer wielded in that human's hand, the metal being hammered, were all singing at this moment. Singing a song of forging, an epic interwoven with fire and iron. The hammer and iron ingot in his hand seemed to come alive. The dwarfs watched in a daze, completely engrossed. Among them, a blacksmith named Gongda was even more so, his eyes shimmering with an inexplicable light. He continuously hammered, added material, and heated it red. Rowan worked methodically, without a trace of panic. After a long while, the longsword had taken shape. Experience plus 90,000. The huge amount of experience made Rowan's experience bar jump up a bit. This was a high-grade weapon. Setting the weapon down, Rowan let out a sigh of relief and looked up, realizing he was surrounded by dwarfs. Hundreds, no, even more dwarfs were encircling him, some even with tears streaming down their faces. "What's going on?" Cough, cough. "Master Rowan, I am very sorry for my disrespectful words just now. Your forging skill is far superior to mine," the forging workshop master said with a look of shame. "I was short-sighted. Haha, forging can only improve through exchange. Stagnating will not lead to progress, it will only make one weaker and weaker." Everyone's faces were flushed red, having been defeated in forging by a human. This was truly too shameful, especially after previously claiming dwarfs were the greatest craftsmen. It's truly embarrassing. Say no more, let's go. I brought a lot of fine wine from the human kingdom, I invite everyone to drink. Whoa. Many dwarfs let out loud roars. Those who loved to drink were friends of dwarfs, and a master craftsman who loved to drink, even if not a dwarf, was still the best friend of dwarfs. A group of people noisily went to a gathering. When Rowan brought out a mountain of fine wine, all the dwarfs' eyes lit up. Although dwarfs were good at blacksmithing, they were quite bad at other things, and their brewing skills were even worse, not even comparable to humans. After Rowan brought out the fine wine, all the dwarfs joined the revelry. Rowan was no exception, drinking and discussing forging with the dwarfs. They talked about various forging techniques and skills, and they taught Rowan common knowledge about rune script. The evening banquet was only about drinking and forging, with no other topics. Rowan earned the dwarfs' respect through his forging skills and fine wine. After drinking all night, they accepted Rowan. Not only did they allow Rowan to live in the city, but they also prepared a house for him. After resting for a night, Rowan went to find the workshop master early the next morning. The workshop master patted his chest, promising to teach Rowan all the rune script techniques. Rune script was already an obsolete technology, in fact, very few dwarfs studied this technique. Even the workshop master didn't know much about it. The dwarfs didn't value this technology, and they wouldn't feel the slightest bit of heartache if it spread. He then called over a dwarf named Gongda, and asked him to teach Rowan rune script. Rowan had some impression of this person. He seemed to be the dwarf who was rescued by the Bone King's group in the mine at the very beginning. Gongda's grandfather and father were both the nation's chief rune craftsmen, and although his rune talent was average, he inherited his parents' knowledge, and was now absorbed in rune script technology. Rune script actually relied heavily on talent. In the story, after the Bone King subjugated the dwarfs, he funded their research. However, before Rowan's transmigration, in the latest chapter of the original novel, rune script still hadn't made much progress and remained in a somewhat useless state. The reason was simple: there were no such geniuses among the dwarfs who could push the progress of rune technology. In fact, any knowledge is advanced by a few geniuses. Relying solely on numbers makes breakthroughs very difficult. Chapter 50, Level 40 reached. Gongda had a very good impression of Rowan. He had no intention of keeping rune script techniques to himself. In fact, he hoped that more people would research rune script techniques with him, but most people didn't want to waste time on such outdated techniques. After learning about the situation of rune script from Gongda, Rowan was slightly disappointed. Although the legacy of rune script techniques still existed, much of it had been lost. There were a total of 90 rune script, 50 low-level ones, all of which were passed down because they were widely circulated. Of the 25 mid-level rune script, 7 had been lost during 200 years of war. Of the 10 high-level rune script, 5 had been lost. Of the 5 highest-level rune script, 4 had been lost. It was simply outrageous. If the royal family hadn't taken the treasures with them back then, these rune script might have been completely preserved. It was said that there were also anti-rune script and divine-level rune script, but of course, these were just legends. Even 200 years ago, such rune script had never been seen. No matter, he would learn as much as he could. For the next period, Rowan studied rune script techniques with Gongda. With a max-level grand blacksmith skill, Rowan's learning speed was astonishingly fast. So fast that Gongda wondered if he himself was a pig. Besides studying, he also frequently forged. Since he was using dwarf materials, it was practically free experience, so he might as well take it. Because he was smithing every day, Rowan quickly became close with the dwarves and earned their admiration. That's right, admiration. Every day, some dwarves would ask him for technical advice, and even the workshop master did the same. The dwarf kingdom was too small, his reputation spread throughout the entire country. Half a month passed, and in just half a month, Rowan gained a lot. Rowan not only learned all the rune script, but because he forged equipment every day, and these were all intermediate or even advanced equipment, he gained a huge amount of experience. His heart forging method also improved to level 6, and his level had reached the current maximum. During this time, he also obtained basic professions several times, including rune artisan, but Rowan gave them all up. 2 high-level production professions were enough. Grand blacksmith could completely encompass the abilities of a rune artisan. Moreover, rune script techniques were just one type of equipment technique, and Rowan couldn't rely solely on this skill. To make a breakthrough, he might need to resolve the conflict between rune script techniques and magic infusion later on. If he could merge the 2 major equipment systems, he would definitely be able to forge even more powerful equipment, and forging divine artifacts in the future would no longer be a fantasy. And after reaching level 40, Rowan's attributes were, see comment section. As his level increased, Rowan's attributes now looked much more balanced. Indeed, most of the professions he took were rare professions, which provided all attribute bonuses, so becoming a well-rounded warrior was only a matter of time. After Bone King reached max level, his highest attribute was MP, with its maximum value already exceeding 100%. Rowan estimated that if he himself reached max level, all his attributes would exceed 100%. The scene was too beautiful to even look at. However, he couldn't be arrogant. In terms of individual strength, attributes, skills, and equipment were all indispensable. Compared to Bone King, his attributes and skills would be superior after reaching max level, but his equipment was far too inferior. Secondly, besides individual strength, intelligence and influence also determined the victory of a battle. In terms of intelligence, when Bone King first arrived, his side had an advantage, but it would be hard to say after a long time. Moreover, the opponent had many generals under his command, while he was all alone. The future was difficult. And the Dragon Kings hidden in the shadows might not be easier to deal with than Bone King. The origin magic they commanded could rival world items. Only he had nothing. Thinking of the enemies he would have to face in the future, Rowan's happy mood calmed down a little. He was thinking too far ahead. It was better to focus on improving his strength and planning carefully for now. Although his level could no longer be increased, experience could still be accumulated. Early in the morning, Rowan left for the workshop. Today, he was going to try to integrate rune script into equipment. To put what he learned into practice, relying only on theory, he would never truly master rune script techniques. In the workshop, Gongda was already waiting for Rowan. He had a depressed look on his face. Indeed, he had worked hard for decades to barely get started, while someone else got started in half a month. This disparity was truly disheartening. Although he knew he wasn't a genius, Rowan's talent was simply too outrageous. From today onwards, there was nothing more he could teach him. As soon as Rowan arrived, he was surrounded by dwarves, with shouts of Master Rowan filling his ears. If Rowan were a dwarf, he could now kick out the current leader, and become the new leader himself. Setting up his stance, Gongda stoked the furnace for Rowan. Since it was his first time using rune script, he was worried about the equipment forging failing, so he didn't use overly good materials, only low-grade ones. This was already very good treatment. Typically, when dwarves practiced, they would never be given such good materials. Once the materials were heated, Rowan began forging. Although his heart forging method had increased by 1 level, the material grade was too low, so the forged equipment was still intermediate, at best among the better intermediate equipment. Next was imbuing the rune script. According to records, 200 years ago, the dwarf royal family's hammer was enchanted with 6 rune script, which was the pinnacle of dwarf technology. So when Bone King arrived and pulled out a weapon enchanted with 20 rune script, it almost scared these dwarves to death. Bone King's items, even casually brought out, were all overwhelmingly powerful. Rowan didn't have such a background and could only rely on his own efforts. Using rune script techniques, Rowan enchanted the rune script onto the equipment. Each rune script had its own meaning, representing a certain characteristic. The higher the level of the rune script, the more powerful the attributes, and the higher the demands on the user's skill and the material's endurance. Rowan was relatively conservative for his first attempt, using only low-level rune script. The rune script solid was successfully enchanted, and a cheer erupted from the surroundings. Everyone was happy for Rowan's success. Although this ancient technique was realized in the hands of an outsider, everyone still felt proud. Relying on the Grand Blacksmith's passive ability, Rowan could clearly feel the power of the rune script flowing, and he could feel that this equipment had not yet reached its limit. So he began to prepare for the enchantment of the second rune script. Rune script would form certain patterns and connect with each other, even playing a role in mutual reinforcement. Therefore, the higher the level of the rune script, the better the equipment, and the more rune script, the better the equipment. Everyone quickly quieted down. A moment later, lightweight was successfully infused, and the equipment emitted a faint glow. There was still strength left and the equipment's state was very stable, so the third rune script, fire resistance, was infused. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Novels Wonderland.